Good evening, everybody. Can we, everybody, remain upstanding for 2 minutes in silence in respect of ex-Councillor Molly Watson and Councillor Paul Kane, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that, everybody. Before I open it to members to speak about Paul and Molly, Molly Watson, elected in 1990 and represented Crossland Moor and Netherton for 26 years. And a funeral is going to take place on Tuesday, the 19th of November. I just want to say a few words about Molly. Molly was a true people's person, was a grandmother of this council, made a big contribution to this council, and will be sadly missed. Paul Kane represented Dewsbury East since 1995, Mayor of Kirklees for the 2015-16 municipal year. And Paul Kane, I got to know him in 2006. When I got elected straight after the count, he came up to me and said, "If you need my help, here's my number." For the first 2 years, Paul helped me in the council, and I cannot forget that. As I said at the mayor making, it's because of Paul and some other people I got to this stage. It's really sad for Kirklees to lose a person who dedicated his 25 years for the local people of Kirklees. He will be sadly missed. So I'll open it to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to stand and pay my respects to both Councillor Paul Kane, ex-Councillor Paul Kane, and ex-Councillor Molly Walton. Mr. Mayor, I got to know Paul Kane back in 1992 when I was a housing officer, housing manager, and a project manager in Kirklees. And he was, then I realised, as the chair of Housing Management Committee, his dedication for his ward, and that's what I want to really reflect on. Although he was the mayor and he was quite well respected across all parties, it was his ward that he cared passionately about. It was Dewsbury that he cared passionately about, and Dewsbury ran through his veins and his body, and everything he did was about Dewsbury, and he did actually try his level best in everything he did. Mr. Mayor, people have mixed emotions at this moment in time. He was a really wise man, wise politician, because there were a number of times when I first got on this council, I came into some difficulties, and it was Paul who actually gave me some guidance, some direction, And to be honest with you, his advice was really valuable advice, golden advice, that I still use and reflect on to this day. Many will have mixed emotions, and as councillors, one of the things that I believe in, it doesn't matter what party you come from or what your politics are, to some degree, you want to do well for your own community. And the harder you try, the more you get involved, the less popular you become. And that's the nature of what we do, especially in the backdrop of things that are happening at the moment around various other issues. You know, it is a difficult time for councillors to actually operate, not just MPs, because we are the front line, we are the heartbeat of the community. And as ward councillors, you know, it is a difficult time. And that's what I really want to reflect on. Because everything councillors do is for the benefit of the community. And one of the things that Paul did, he always put his community first. And despite becoming unpopular, I think what we need to realise is no matter what happens, I will go, many people will go as well, but what we are remembered for is the good work we've done. And Paul has done some sterling work. He was an ambassador, an advocate, not just for his ward, but also Kirklees. And it's in that vein, Mr. Mayor, that I want to make sure that everybody remembers him and reflect on all the good work he did. It's easy to criticise, but I get criticised on a daily basis. But having said that, right, yeah, you know, we all know that we have got good intentions, and that's what we need to actually celebrate. Mr. Mayor, also Molly Walton, she was a stalwart of this council. You know, I also knew Molly when I used to work in the homeless persons unit, and I used to get phone calls from her as a homelessness officer on a regular basis, and she used to ring for people that are destitute, people that are homeless, and they weren't even registered to vote. But she was one of the councillors that actually generated the most casework. And I think even in the later years of her being a councillor, in the last few years, she used to just churn away casework left, right and centre. And she knew every single person really in her ward. And that's why she was a very popular councillor. But again, she did her best. And she will be somebody who I will actually remember for the rest of my life. So in that vein, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to wish their loved ones, their family and friends all the best, and we are with them, our thoughts are with them, and I'm sure there'll be many more people who will pay their respects. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pando. Councillor McBride.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Labour Group and this council has suffered two profound losses in the last 2 weeks. Molly and Paul were both long-serving Labour councillors, each served over 25 years. Both held very senior positions. Molly as Chair of Education in the John Harmon era. Later she was in charge of adults and as a cabinet member. Paul was a previous mayor and Chair of Planning. Many years ago he was also Chair of Building Services, which I know was very close to his heart. They were both deeply committed to their wards of Crossland Moor and Dewsbury East. Both were fiercely loyal to their hometowns, Huddersfield and Dewsbury respectively. They were characters, dedicated and ready to go to war for their causes. But there was a gentler side of both, which officers and members have been recollecting in the past few weeks. They'll be sadly missed, cross-party, as people who've made a huge impact on the lives of others, very much for their better. Our condolences go out to their families.
Thank you, Councillor McBride. Councillor Cathy Scott.
When someone passes away before their time, we think about the times we spent together, what we've learned and what we're going to carry on, their good work and what after they are gone.
Paul Kane was a colleague, comrade and friend. Was a very proud man that never forgot his humble beginnings and where he come from. Passionate about his community and his beloved Dewsbury, wanting the best for all, the town and the communities and everything that surrounded it. He was instrumental in the change of this landscape across Kirklees in his role as the Heavy Woolen Planning Chair and also on strategic. He understood whilst development was necessary, it was his role and a passionate role that he was to get the best for Dewsbury and Kirklees, wherever this development took place. He made you think about your priorities. He would often want us to sit around the table, despite our political differences, and dialogue equalled engagement. Engagement meant success for the whole of Kirklees. He said what he thought, and often if you were on the receiving end, it was a sting, and you had to give him a couple of days to get over it. He had a fantastic sense of humour, and one I'll take with me. I was on planning with him for 10 years. A few trips in, we come across some stocks on a site. I'm not going to say where they are. And he says, Scotty, I've got to see if they work. And I says, go on then, get in. And he says, my back. So he put me in them, ran off, and got on the planning bus and told him I'd gone. So, and the next time, when I was newly elected, he locked me in the town hall and said, you'll never be the last one out, you'll learn, girl. So I'm going to miss his saying, Scotty's, where are you? Beam me up, Scotty. Scotty, get us a pint. And my respect goes to the family, the Kane family today, sons James and Michael. But I also want to thank them for sharing him with us and making an impact on Kirklees.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Molly was elected councillor in 1990, year after I was elected 89. I worked with Molly for 26 years until she retired from the council. Molly was dedicated to her role as a councillor. She been a chair of the Education Authority, Education Committee and Old Committee System, and she been a member of the cabinet before she retired. Molly had sense of humor. Sometimes she entertained the members in the council chamber. She stood up, she shouting some members, especially my colleague sitting in front of me, Donald Farr. Donald, they were good friends, but when she shouting, they entertain every member wake up. So that was the person, she was, feel sorry, we lost her, and lost to the council, lost to the Labour Party. But Paul Kane, I worked with Paul Kane for 24 years, yeah. He was really a very dedicated member of the Labour group. He was the effective chair of the Dewsbury Heavy Woolen for 15 years. That's a long time. He always decided application. He always take into account the views of the opposition member when he decide the big application. And his contribution last year before to the local plan, we can't forget that. His contribution to the Labour group and other. I really feel sorry to lose Councillor Paul Kane it's a big loss to the Labour group, the Labour Party, and to the council here. So my feeling, my condolence go to Molly and Paul Kane as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor Lukic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, Dewsbury was stunned and saddened to hear that our long-serving councillor Paul Kane had resigned and later been found dead. I received the news on Tuesday evening while out in Ilseaton and could not contain my shock. At about 1 o'clock that afternoon, I'd sent Paul a text saying, "Heard about your resignation, Paul. Hope you're okay. Give me a ring this evening if you want." As a new councillor, Paul had helped me in my first few months, just as he had helped countless members of this council and countless people in Dewsbury East in his decades of service. He was a very popular representative for the local community, and I was proud to have him as a ward colleague. My page was quickly filled with dozens of tributes to Paul when the sad news emerged. Paul was known as a man who could bring people together and bridge social and political divides, a man dedicated to his town, his borough, his party and his ward. He will be sorely missed. Rest in peace, Paul.
Thank you for that. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to speak about Molly Walton. And whilst mourning Molly's passing, I also think we should celebrate her life and her achievements. Molly was both one of the most feisty people I've ever met and also one of the most warm, generous and compassionate. One of her main interests was the welfare of children and tackling educational inequality. Molly herself was a highly intelligent and immensely well-read woman. Her own educational journey, I think, is inspiring and instructive. It demonstrates how selective education can stifle talent. It also shows that opportunities for lifelong learning are vital in unlocking ignored potential, and that was certainly the case in Molly's life. Molly came from a Durham mining family and failed to pass the 11 plus that would have allowed her to study at Durham Grammar School. Only one girl in a year at school actually was successful in passing, and this denied her the educational opportunities that she clearly deserved. She moved to Huddersfield in 1948. Her 15th birthday present from her grandfather, with whom she'd been brought up, was Labour Party membership. And by the early 1950s, she was already an important local political figure. She was also very good at things like public speaking, and in a memoir, an essay that she wrote, she talks about how, along with Betty Boothroyd, she represented West Yorkshire at a Labour speaking competition where they got through to the finals and came third down in London. Molly returned to learning really through the Labour movement. She was a trade unionist as well as a Labour Party member. And in the 1950s, she attended on a regular basis weekend schools at Wortley Hall. After this, family responsibilities kind of got in the way, as well as the fact that she was working as well as looking up a family. But eventually, in 1983, she returned to full-time study at the Northern College. From that, she did extremely well, was outstanding. And in 1990, Molly went to Bradford University to study for a degree in politics and history, where again she flourished and was extremely successful. Being Molly and somebody who loved a challenge, at the same time, she took up a position as a councillor, as has earlier been said, for the Crossland, Moor and Netherton constituency. As a councillor, Molly rapidly became chair of the Education Committee, a role that she held with distinction for many years. Along with another formidable campaigner for working class education, Jessie Smith, she was the most dynamic and effective female councillor that I've ever had the pleasure to meet. She'll be very much missed by friends, political comrades and the wider community. You only need to speak to people within her ward to realise what an impact that she's had on people's lives. She will be very fondly remembered.
Thank you. Councillor Server.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I work with Molly. It's very sad to lose two colleagues, one sitting councillor and one ex-councillor. Molly was a very good friend, good councillor. She was a legend, stalwart. I worked with Molly for past 13 years. And when she retired, even though she'd been ringing me and we've been meeting each other, I used to go to her house every week, and she said, "You don't have to ring me. My door's always open for you. Whenever you come, side door is open, just walk in." And she will be missed in community. She was a so good person. She remembered constituents' names. Whenever we go out, she wanted to go out on Sunday, especially down in Thornton Lodge and in Bottom Crossland Moor. And she says, how are we going to see so-and-so people? And she already knew their names, their family names, their children names. And when we walking, counseling, knocking doors, even children about 10 years age, they know Molly is there, Molly is there. We really miss her. I've spoken with her daughters other day, as it's been said, we'll celebrate because she holds a lot of positions in council and outside council as well. Everyone knows there are all professional people here, but some are legend, and she was one of them. I will really miss her, but she will stay in our hearts forever. And so Paul Kane as well. He was a good friend. I can still see. It looks like he's going to just walk in and he will sit there and start joking with us. I'm really sad. I'm broken heart. She was treating me like brother, to be honest. I hope wherever she is, she live with peace. Thank you.
Councillor Kaushik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, about Molly. Molly, I got placement for Molly. Like when I was first standing, Molly was stepping down. And she was so ill at that time, but the amount of work she did for me is marvelous. And we're going to miss her because it's my election next year as well, and nobody's going to be there to tell me, Manisha, you haven't done this, Manisha, you haven't done. You have to knock that door, so we're going to miss her. And Paul, since I got elected, Paul always sit next to me, and we share so many things together. He was always telling me what is good and what is not good, what to say, what not to say. He's such a generous man. He looked after not only us Labour councillors, but everyone who walked towards Paul. Paul had a wicked sense of humor, and I will miss his banter. And thank you.
Councillor Donovan.
They were all saddened and shocked by the news of Molly and Paul's passing. I think in particular I'd just like to offer some... Is that okay? Thank you. Yeah, I'd just say I think we're all very saddened at the passing of Molly and Paul, and I'd only known Molly a few years as a councillor. I think the one bit of advice I remember from Molly, and the one thing I picked up from Molly in council meetings, is she was no nonsense. She said it as she saw it, and she said it how she wanted to say it. There were no airs and graces. I think there's always a time to be planned and to be regimented and to be organised, but what Molly did really well is she spoke from the heart, off and off the cuff, and you know what? It worked really well, and she got a point across really well. I'll always remember that. Paul. Gosh, I got to know Paul in 2009. It was the early days of the Dewsbury Town team. And I was kicking around this idea of standing as a Labour councillor. I was a candidate at the time. And Paul really encouraged me to take part in that Dewsbury Town team at a time when I wasn't so sure. And you know what, I did it. And I really appreciate the fact that Paul took that time to encourage me to get involved in that group. And it gave me a lot of experience. I think one enduring memory I have of Paul that hasn't been covered yet is probably just his ability to have known so many people in Dewsbury. I can't say this happened very often because it probably wouldn't be fair to me, Mumtaz and others if I did, but on occasion Paul wouldn't have a problem with texting me and saying, I've just seen so-and-so in town, can you text them, can you ring them? He seemed to know everybody in Dewsbury West, in Dewsbury South, in Dewsbury East, and when he was in the town centre, they'd come and speak to him and he'd know straight away who to put him in touch with. I used to say, I've already spoken to them, Paul. I spoke to them just yesterday, but chances are there'd be something else he needed to speak about. It was always very encouraging. You can't underestimate the amount of time and effort that he spent on Dewsbury Town Centre and the people of Dewsbury, all for the better of Dewsbury. Many meetings that are, you know, officer meetings, not all public meetings, but to quantify the amount of time and effort over that number of years is just staggering. And I think on behalf of people in Dewsbury West, on behalf of people in Dewsbury, I think we're very grateful for the time and the effort in those meetings, trying to get the best deal for Dewsbury that Paul put in there. He'll be sadly missed.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. Myself, like everybody else in the chamber, was saddened by the loss of both Paul Kane and Molly Walton last week. Both passed away within 24 hours of one another, left us all reeling. Both were big personalities in the council. I didn't have a lot of contact with Molly on committees, but saw enough in council over the last decade to know that she had her residents' best interests at heart, and she was adamant that the right thing should be done, and if she didn't think it was being done, she'd let you know, no matter which party you were in. I know also that she was a role model for female Labour members and a mentor to many, taking in new members under her wing and showing them the ropes of council, something that we can all aspire to. I worked more closely with Paul right from when I joined, and first went on planning and a brief stint on the mental health ad hoc panel. I understand that I didn't see the more firebrand side of Paul, although it did shine through at council sometimes, so I can well believe that that was an integral part of him. My experience was that of a man who cared deeply for his residents and brought a thoughtful approach to the work of council, listening to points of view and supporting those that he agreed with. He cared deeply for the reputation of the council too, and on more than one occasion in planning meetings defended both the council and officers when things were said that were out of turn. Again, he was a larger-than-life character and ready with a joke and a smile, which often made our very difficult work pass a little easier. Both Molly and Paul will be keenly missed in our day-to-day work, and the Liberal Democrat group sends its heartfelt condolences to the colleagues, friends and family of both Paul and Molly.
Thank you for that. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say I find it very difficult to make notes about occasions like this. So what I'm going to say is what I have thought about saying, and it will perhaps come out in no particular order. I knew Paul by far the better of the two, having worked with him on the Heavy Woollen Planning Committee for quite a long time, and more recently on the Strategic Planning Committee. I have always found that he was one of the best chairs I have worked with, because he tried to involve everybody on the committee, and that is a skill that chairs need to learn, to be honest. And he did it very well by trying to encourage people to speak. I know with me, I always wanted to speak, so to some extent I had to restrain myself. But he knew what he was doing. What he was doing in planning was related very closely to his work. So he had a good grounding in what was happening. And as other people have said, the importance of doing the things that were in front of us properly, so that they were done exactly as they should be done. And he worked very hard to make sure that people understood all of that, and the people who came to object, they were treated with respect and listened to, and taken on board where it was appropriate. And I found that was an example of a really good councillor in the public-facing sense. I mean, I can't, from experience, know what went on in the Labour group, but people have said that he was very well regarded there, and that is a compliment, because often in political groups, there are all sorts of things going on which well, we better not talk about. But I guess that Paul was probably a very good diffuser of situations where it was appropriate. I'm sure he had his moments in other directions, but the experience that I've had working with him in a public place and knowing how much work he put into it is a testament to, as I say, one of the very best type of local authority councillor. And I think that is a fitting tribute. I think the same can apply to Molly, who I didn't know as well as Paul, but other members have said some really interesting and complimentary things. And again, the fact that we are talking about compliments means that she was highly regarded by other members. Again, in a political group, all sorts of things can be going on. But you do try and seek the best in people, I think. And they will both be very, very sorely missed. And I think that what's been said so far, it backs up all of that. And I thank other members for what they've contributed towards this.
Thank you. Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to associate myself with those expressions of sympathy as well. I'd like to remember two larger-than-life characters. Witty and very warm and very wise. First of all, Paul. Do you know, he always greeted me as if I were a long-lost mate. He'd come right up and give me a big hug and say, "How's the missus?" And I'll remember him for that. And also, as a young member, I remember when we're eager, and we're eager to please residents, I'll send it to the planning committee. And then you'd be there at planning committee making this big speech, and you could see the twinkle in his eye, and he's obviously thinking, "You haven't got a chance, mate, with this. What are you referring to me for?" And then later, when you get a bit wiser to these things, to be ringing him up and saying, "Paul, what do you reckon about this?" And he'd give you good advice. And then on the odd occasion, he'd ring me and say, "David, what's all this about? Do you really need to bring this?" And, you know, we'd talk it through, and we'd always come out. And secondly, of course, Molly. And it doesn't seem 2 minutes since we were talking about Molly, you know, when she retired. And she was always one to have a joke. And it didn't matter if it were at your expense. She'd have a joke with you, wouldn't she, about you? And I remember when we lost our baby, she was very, very kind. And I remember saying to her afterwards, "Well, the doctors told us there's no reason we can't have any more children." And she said to me, "What are you doing here? Go home and get banging." and on another occasion, I think it might have been my first budget meeting, and I turned up in what I thought were very natty, black and white, patent shoes. And she just took one, looked at him and says, "Who do you think you are, Al Capone? You look like your mother's dressed you." And funnily enough, I never wore them again. But I will remember these two characters, lovely, lovely people, warm, witty and wise, and we can learn a lot from them.
Thank you for that. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, two stalwarts, Molly and Paul. I first met Molly Walton at a by-election in 1989, that's a long time ago, at the Slough Civic. I had stood at a by-election and I got in. And that night I had a cream suit on. I'd only just bought it, and I said to my wife, "Shall I put this?" She said, "Yeah, you put it on." It was a nice warm evening night. Molly came over to me after the count and she said, "Who do you think you are?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I thought they were going to be singer." I said, "Well, I can't promise being that because I can't sing very well." She said, "Well, anyway, lad, that's done all right." And, you know, from that day to this, up to now, we got on like a house on fire. The only time we never got on was in planning meetings. And she's called me some names. They're brainless. You know, things like if you went against it, everybody were brainless. And after meetings, she were fine, you know. So when I was mayor, I just said to my wife, I wonder what I'm going to get to second me. I got Eddie and Murphy to propose me, and I said, Molly, will you second me? I will, lad. And she did. She seconded me. So I can always have a look at her, because I've got her on my video. I want to have a look and see how she went. I can always keep looking at her. No, she was great with Molly. 100%. And she looked after her patch in Crossland Moor. She was known by, I think every officer in Kirklees knew her. I mean, she was Kirklees, really. Getting back to Paul, there was another stalwart. I mean, Paul, he was a good mate of mine, even though we were on opposite sides, but he still always, as David said, he'd greet you, grab you by the shoulders, how you going on, lad? All right, yeah, fine. You know, it didn't matter. The only thing that I will remember at the last council meeting, he was sat over there where there's a rose, which looks quite good there. And he had a long face all the council meeting, and he never spoke after the meeting. He generally came home, we had a word after the meeting, but he disappeared. And I haven't seen him since. I did ring him on the Tuesday of last week. There was no answer. Well, I now know why there was no answer. Tried him on both phones. So we're going to miss Paul. We're going to miss Molly. Because Molly, without a doubt, was fine. She was superb. And she'd help you. If you were stuck with anything, she'd sort you out. No problem. She was always there. And the wife and I always used to go fortnight, 3 weeks before Christmas to see her since she retired. And I only said last week, we'd better be organising ourselves to go see Molly, else we might leave it too late. Well, guess what? We've left it too late. But I shall be there at the funeral. She was great, and so was Paul. Both of them superb people. Thank you very much.
Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to talk about Paul Kane, first of all. Just 4.5 weeks ago, I went to Heavy Woolen Planning Subcommittee to represent 2 families, Hetman White residents, on 2 different applications. And the result of that committee was Planning Committee 2, Viv Kendrick, 0. However, at the end of the meeting, Paul came up to me and said, now then, lass, I hope you're not too disappointed. And he went on to go over comments that the committee had made, key points, and showed a way for both families who were in real difficult situations that they could do new applications that had perhaps, hopefully, greater chance of success. And that's really sound advice. Paul didn't have to do that. He and the committee quite rightly applied good judgment on the applications, but Paul empathised with the situations that these families were in. His knowledge on planning was vast, but he didn't hide behind regulations and rules. Mr Mayor, he didn't forget this was about real people and real situations. As for Molly, I'm wearing green today because Molly loved green. She taught me a lot of things. She also called me lass, for which, from both Molly and Paul, at my age, I take as a great compliment. She greatly enhanced my knowledge of adult social care, and she wasn't slow to challenge me and really speak her mind. Molly was, as people have said, feisty and forthright. She called any of us a bloody fool if she thought that, and I've heard her say it right round this chamber. Sorry, Mr Mayor, for swearing, it's Molly's fault. But she could also be kind and compassionate. Above all, she was passionate about people, and she really cared. She would often say, "Hey, lass, you're just like me." I don't think I agree with her, but by God, I wish I was.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
I first met Molly in 1986 when I was a young activist in Crossland Moor. And I think my first feelings about Molly were, she's scary. She was quite scary. But you get to know people over the years, and yes, she was kind, yes, she was warm, and there was that real warmth of feeling that came from Molly. But I've got to admit, the first word I think of when I think of Molly is fierce, really fierce. I mean, she was fiercely loyal to the Labour Party. She was fiercely loyal to her constituents, and she was actually sometimes pretty fierce in this council chamber. And I've been referred to as "and you," and the Liberal Democrats, "you lot." I think that was the general term that she used for Liberal Democrats there. But yeah, she was formidable, definitely formidable within the chamber, and incredibly hardworking for the people across the moor. People across the moor still talk about her today, you know, in terms of the work that she's putting for the community there. And so you can still hear her, can't you, as a character within the chamber. You can still imagine her being in this meeting and giving some of us quite a bit of grief, which is fine. She'd never stab you in the back, and that was great, actually. I much enjoyed some of our occasional parrying in the council. Paul, just really well liked across the political groups, and friendly. And when you sort of look at him, and you see that little smile in his eye, and there was that hint of mischief and a laugh. He always seemed like he was either laughing or cheerful or whatever, and that was great. And I know that a number of us here are certainly going to miss Paul. And my condolences to the Labour group, the condolences to everybody here who's friends with them and the families, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say a couple of words about Paul Kane. As has been previously mentioned, he was a really excellent chair of the Heavy Wheel Plan, and that's where I got to know him. We had a fairly rocky start, to be honest, which in many ways is pretty good, because if you subsequently come to like someone, you know that you're doing it for the genuine right reasons. So when I first met Paul, I had a preconceived idea of what I thought I would think of him because of something I'd heard him saying in a public speech he'd done, and I, you know, without going into the details, I then met him on the planning bus, and he said a couple of things to me that I didn't really like. I didn't think he should have said, and so I told him what I thought, and we agreed to disagree for a couple of weeks. I think he was similar to me in some respects. He said what he thought, which is all right by me. I don't mind people who say what they think, because I've always been somebody to say what I think and then sometimes regret it later. But I have to say that throughout the course of getting to know him over a couple of 3 months later on down the line, I started to realise that he was very good at planning meetings. He knew a lot of stuff. He was an intelligent man, and he knew what he was talking about. And I thought, you know, I like the way he talked to residents. I like the way that, despite our early disagreements, he was very respectful and polite towards me. He always gave me a chance to speak, and we started to treat each other respectfully. And one day something happened. I think it was about 3 months after the first time I met him. And I was trying to construct some kind of an argument in a bit of a haphazard way, bumbling around planning issues that I wasn't really clear about. And he helped me in the planning meeting in a very nice way, not in a condescending way, but in a very, very nice, friendly way. And I thought, yeah, it was very kind of him to do that, because he could have really made me look a bit of an idiot by not helping me, or by helping me in a way that made me look even more daft than I tried to make myself look. But he didn't do that. He did it in a very kind way, and I respected him for that. I liked him for it. And we got sort of friendly after that. We used to chat to each other quite a lot. He sent me an email about three years ago. Apparently I'd got the elasticated tape measure award or whatever. I'm not sure quite what I'd done to deserve that year. Probably put my foot in it somewhere along the line, but I never quite got around to finding exactly what I'd done to deserve that. And you know, time passed by, and I didn't serve on the Heavy Loan Planning for a few months or a couple of years. But I used to bring him up now and again. It never became, can I speak to you about this planning issue? It was always, hello, I want to talk. And it was like 5 minutes before I got to chat to him about what I was actually ringing him for, because it was always just, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm all right. How are you? Blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I got to the West Yorkshire Scrutiny earlier on this year, and I was really chuffed that Paul was there. So, you know, we had another chance to chinwag, and I think my abiding memory of you know, I was really sorry last week when I heard the news. I sent Paul an email about probably about 6 or 8 months ago when he was ill. I found out he was ill, and I sent him an email, and I said, I hope you're well, I hope you're feeling better, sorry to hear you've been ill, etc. And I sort of relayed a few stories that sort of a little bit more than I've just said now, but stuff that only he and I will know about, bits where we started off on the wrong foot and bits along the way, and he sent me such a lovely response, and it was along the lines of, you know, it didn't take me that long to realise you were a decent bloke, Richard, and I've always thought of you as a friend, and you know, that's how I'd like to remember Paul. And so I'd just like to say to all his friends and his family that my condolences and rest in peace.
Thank you for that. Councillor Idale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First time I met Molly was when I was elected in 2003, and she came up and said congratulations. And I loved Molly. She called a spade a shovel. There was no messing. You knew exactly where you stood with her. But we bonded over planning. We used to go after planning to the Merry England and have a fag and discuss and discuss politics. And we were both fans of Hillary Clinton. We were devastated when she didn't win Barack Obama. We were absolutely gutted when she didn't win to Trump. But she was lovely. I really will miss her. And I will be there on Tuesday to pay my final respects. As for Paul, I didn't know Paul very well, but he always spoke. He was always very nice, a lovely man, and my condolences to his family as well.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Firstly, my condolences to both Molly's family and Paul's, or Caney. He will always be Caney, to those who knew him. I've known him many, many years before I became elected member, and served with him all my elected life as on Heavy Wool and Planning. Anybody who relishes the role of being chair in Heavy Wool and Planning must have a personality flaw, because you have no friends whatsoever. You always upset someone, whether it's the public going out saying you're idiots, you don't know what you're doing, or the developers stomping off, slamming doors behind them. So you don't have any friends. But he handled that role absolutely brilliantly. Much has been said about that role, but he always spoke to residents and developers in a calm, measured manner, and where they needed advice, he would advise them. He didn't take sides, he was very straight down the line, but he would help anybody. Councillor Kennedy's already referred to the last planning committee meeting, where he actually helped her afterwards. He was always there. He was brilliant as a chair of planning. I'm not saying we didn't disagree, and we might have shouted at each other because he could shout, but I thought he handled that role incredibly well. One thing that's not been mentioned so far is his year as mayor. Paul was a fantastic mayor, served that role incredibly well, and was incredibly proud of being mayor. Perhaps not what you might have thought when he first was going to be mayor. But he played that role absolutely brilliantly. And I think it's probably the last mayor that'll ever be allowed in the mayor's parlour after the mayor making, because I still don't know what time they threw us out. Late. And it was late. They kept coming to us and saying, we need to lock the town hall up. And he kept saying, we'll just have one more. So whilst he was a hard worker and he was totally committed to his beloved Dewsbury, he certainly knew how to enjoy himself. And those who were close enough to him to know him well, who were invited to his barbecues at his house, are legendary, and those conversations are not for public, but if anybody wants to know about the barbecues, see me later. We used to have a really interesting evening with Paul's barbecues. Molly. Well, there's lots been said about Molly, and I don't know what else you can add. She was, as somebody said, she certainly called a spade a shovel. She spoke her own mind. She had a way with her that, despite you might not have agreed with her, you couldn't tell but admire her, and you'd walk away friends. I shared an office with Molly when I first came in the cabinet, and it was really an interesting experience, because round about lunchtime, the PAs or the support officers had come down
stick the head round the corner and said, "Do you want a sandwich, Molly?" "Aye, get me a sandwich and get me 20 fags." She rarely finished the sandwich, but by God, she finished the fags. I used to keep air freshener in my drawer because she used to smoke in the building when it was illegal. And the then chief exec, Adrian, used to walk down the corridor, and before he got to the door, he would say, "Morning, Molly," because he could smell the smoke drifting down the corridor. She used to sit there reading the Examiner. She'd go through the obituaries and she'd say, "Oh, so-and-so's died." And her last comment was always, "Buggered it, she was one of ours." Well, buggered it, Molly was one of ours.
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to stand up and speak about Councillor Paul Kane. I've known Paul Kane since 1996, when I came out of university from Birmingham, and my first job was working for Kirklees College as an outreach worker, and my area, funny enough, was Chickenley. I spent 4 years working in Chickenley, and I got to know Paul and Eric, the likely lads, as I would call them, for Chickenley, because both of them said to me, "Don't worry, Masood, there's not many South Asian communities in Chickenley, but you're welcome, but we'll take you around, you'll make you feel at home, you've got nothing to worry about." And to be honest with you, my 4 years in Chickenley were great. I mean, both of them really looked after me, and especially Paul, in terms of the advice and guidance he'd given me. And then, funny enough, I became a councillor as well, and I got to know Paul in the last 12 years or so as a councillor, and having served on the Dewsbury District Committee as the chair, and having Paul's guidance to run and chair meetings. I know a lot of people have talked about his chairing skills, and you do pick up a lot from Paul in terms of the advice and guidance that he gives you in terms of how to go about chairing a meeting and how you do things. And it was great to have somebody there that could steer you and guide you in those meetings. I mean, I was privileged enough to be with him on the Dewsbury Endowment Trust and various other committees that I was fortunate to be with him. But one that really fascinated me more than anybody was when he tried to bring businesses to Dewsbury, and there was an event in Dewsbury Town, and the chief exec's laughing, but he was saying to me, "Masood, come on, you know a lot of businesses, you must know enough businesses to get these millionaires, South Asian millionaires, to Dewsbury Town Hall." And funny enough, we got loads of businesses there, and we had this fantastic event, and I don't think we've had an event such as that. And I think that was something that Paul Kane inherited and developed, bringing all those communities together. And I just want to echo what Councillor Donovan said as well about Paul. If you go into Dewsbury Town Centre, everybody knew who Paul was. If you go into the shops, they knew who Paul was, and in terms of what Dewsbury meant to him, and as a Dewsbury lad, because he's really, really passionate about Dewsbury. I mean, I'm born and bred Dewsbury lad as well, so I know what Dewsbury is, and you could see that in his eyes in terms of what Dewsbury was. So he will be surely missed, and my sincere condolences to him and his family. Molly, I know a lot of people have covered Molly, but to me, which is like a mother, I'll be honest with you, when I first became a councillor, you needed somebody really to guide and support you. I mean, I know Councillor Mahbub Khan was around, but having Molly was another thing. She said how it was, but she guided you, steered you, worked with you, and even told you to how to do things and what people would like and which offices to go to, what they'd expect from you. So she had that aroma, feisty, but again, going back to what Councillor Turner said, I'm not a smoker, but I'll tell you one thing, I used to walk out of that room going, I can't see. You know, I need to go to Specsavers, because honestly, there's that much smoke that she smoked one fag after the other. I was thinking, where are these cigarettes going? But bless her, she genuinely was a lovely, lovely woman, and she will be surely missed. And I'm in the chamber, I know Councillor Firth and others have mentioned it, she genuinely was a really good person to have, and both of them will be surely missed, and I intend to go to both funerals as and when they are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. We move on now. I have the pleasure of informing Council that Woodley School, Huddersfield, which provides education provision for children and young people aged 5 to 19 with complex communication and interaction needs, including children with autism, has received national recognition to their work in relation to autism. The award recognizes the contribution the whole staff team make to provide effective support for children and young people with their needs and their commitment to sharing their knowledge and expertise with others to support effective inclusion in Kirklees schools. The head teacher of Woodley School, Anne Lawton, has been invited to join us today, and I have the pleasure in presenting her with the following token of appreciation. Would you like to come to the front, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. It was really unexpected and really, really welcome, because you don't often, I seem to spend my life thanking people for doing things in school, and it really, really is appreciated, so thank you for that. We've had visits from 3 of the councillors that I know that are in here tonight, but you're all very welcome, because I'm sure that there will be a child from your ward that comes to my school. So we're next to Longley Golf Club, we're Woodley School, we used to be Longley School. So a school for children with autism, really, really complex autism. And those children that we have in our school cost the society a lot of money. If they weren't with us, they'd cost us a lot more going out. And I think we've really, really benefited from your support, the support of the local authority in providing excellent facility for those children. So thank you very much for that, and please do come and visit us in school. We'd love to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. I would like to advise Council of an award of an inscribed silver dish received from East Ayrshire Council in recognition of support to the Council has provided East Ayrshire as part of the partnership to assist them in the transformation of their customer service centres.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to have some good news, actually. Councillor Erin Hill wasn't available today to come and come and pass her condolences. I know she was really keen that she wants Council to know just how much she wanted to do that, to speak certainly around the loss of Councillor Paul Kane and both Councillor and Councillor Molly Walton. But she did have a better excuse. And I have the pleasure of telling you all that Erin gave birth to a baby daughter weighing £9.7. That's a big baby, let me tell you. And I'd like to congratulate and convey our congratulations to Erin on the arrival of baby Anna. Okay, back to business then. At the all-party briefing, it was agreed the Council Procedure Rule 5.5 be suspended so that the key discussion item will not begin at 7 o'clock, and the agenda will be considered as printed. Does Council agree with that recommendation?
Are we okay with that, show of hands?
Okay.
Thank you. Item 2, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Sokal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you heard just now from Chief Executive, Councillor Erin Hill got a lovely baby daughter, so apology from her, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, we have apologies from Councillor Michelle Granger-Mead, Councillor Michael Watson and Councillor Charlotte Goodwin. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Item 3, I move that the minutes of the meeting of council held on 16 October 2019 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Okay, show of hands, please. Approved. Carried. Thank you. Item 4, members who have any interest should declare their interest now. Are there any interests? Can I remind members who have declared an interest to complete a form and submit to the clerk by the end of the meeting? Thank you. Item 5, petition from members of the council. Are there any petitions?
Undertake. Thank you. Do you want me to tell you, say what it is? Okay, it's for the road junctions along Penistone Road at Fenny Bridge to be made safer, and it's also asking for a reduction of the speed limit from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour along that same stretch of road. Thank you.
Thank you. In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 931, I direct that the subject matter of the petitions be referred to the appropriate service director for investigation. Thank you. Item 6, to receive deputations or petitions from members of the public, and there are 3 deputations this evening. Can we have the first deputation, please? Welcome to the meeting. Can you please introduce yourself and the subject matters of your deputation? You have 5 minutes to present your deputation. You can start now. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Richard Stowe. I'm presenting this evening independently in relation to the Climate Emergency Declaration report. I fully respect the Council and officers in bringing this report. However, I note the Working Party report was published on the 6th of November, allowing only 5 days for deputations before consideration by Cabinet and now the full Council. I received assurances from Cabinet and officers that should the report be passed this evening, the evidence could inform policy development, and I trust that advice. The paper which you have mostly addresses the absence of Working Party consideration of tree policy and further some key failings of the report. I need to draw attention to the fact that tree cover accounts for maybe 50% of climate mitigation. So without the report considering tree cover, it's 50% inadequate. As a case in point, the ancient and priority woodland proposed to be destroyed by the Cooper Bridge Road scheme is our community's rainforest. Tree preservation order policy urgently needs strengthening. The community needs to be actively encouraged to public alerting of trees officers to possible illegal felling activity. Trees unprotected by TPOs and even TPO protected trees are notoriously illegally felled at weekends, in the knowledge that there are no trees officers on call until Monday morning. Kirklees Council need to establish an out of hours tree officer service. I note that there's, you have this paper by the way, I note that there's scope for greatly increased tree cover in new developments, scope for compensatory tree planting schemes to deliver council and northern forest planting land. The business model of development can accommodate compensatory planting schemes. Finally, I'm concerned that linking climate emergency and clean air in one report runs the risk of justifying major new roads on the grounds of clean air, and that major new roads can only increase the amount of traffic, and so there's a conflict of interest there. I further note that emission of industrial emissions, and note that the Environment Agency public records show Syngenta emissions of 144 tonnes of CFCs responsible for destruction of the ozone layer, and this emission has actually been illegal by the Montreal Agreement since 1989. Finally, I wish to reiterate the assurance from the Council Leader, the Cabinet and the Officer assurance that this evidence will inform policy going forward. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for that. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, thanks, Richard, for your deputation. And I recognise your concern that we must achieve the most robust possible response to the climate change emergency. The response of the Working Party is intended to recognise the reality of the emergency and set out in broad terms the Council's response. The proposed Climate Change Commission will develop and act on this initial report. Like all action plans, it will be an evolving and responsive document. Whilst the Council is obviously a key player in terms of trying to tackle this emergency locally, it is also clear that this work can only be undertaken in partnership with organisations and the wider community. Building these partnerships and changing behaviours will be essential if we're to be successful. So these things are not written in tablets of stone. It's important that we maintain this dialogue and we look to develop and constantly seek ways of becoming better at tackling these really serious problems. However, I think to delay acceptance of this report would delay the action that is necessary to tackle the climate change emergency. I can assure you that there will be extensive opportunities for individuals and groups to have their say as our response develops over the next few years. So this is going to be an ongoing process. It's not just a one-off thing. On the specific points regarding woodland, we've had several chats about this. I think you make some interesting points. And again, it's really important that we stress that dialogue about these things has got to continue going forward. I'd like to point out that in the paper that you've distributed, one thing that is worth pointing out is that the extent of tree cover is actually, according to the latest survey, which has been recently carried out by West Yorkshire Combined Authority, indicates that we've actually got 15.2% tree cover, which is actually the second highest in West Yorkshire. This is excellent news. Not just that we've got the trees, but what's more important is that because we're committed to planting 30% more trees, this means that the extra trees that we're going to plant, the quantity is increased. And again, stress that our aim is to plant at least 2.5 million extra trees. These are not trees that are all going to be planted on council land. There isn't the capacity to do that. It's about working with partner organisations to identify the land and identify the methods, the schemes by which we can deliver this tree planting. I share your concerns about tree protection. It can be extremely frustrating, harrowing almost sometimes, when trees have been unnecessarily cut down. And we will do everything that we can to strengthen protection. We've brought in more staffing, both in terms of tree protection and also to work on the process of creating extra woodland. Unfortunately, I think without a major influx of extra funding, some of the things that you suggest, whilst there might be things that would be great if we could have them, will be quite difficult. So I'm thinking about things like the 30-minute response, the 24-hour a day service. Yes, we will look at them, but I think with current resources, they're going to be quite hard to achieve. And I can assure you that certainly in my own portfolio brief, looking at green issues alongside Councillor Mather, I will be extremely focused on ensuring that we look to preserve trees wherever possible, and we put a lot of energy into meeting our targets of planting extra trees. So I look forward to working with you in future. Thank you.
Thank you for attending to present your deputations. Thank you very much. Next deputation, please. Welcome to the meeting. Please can you introduce yourself and the subject matters of your deputation. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation. You can start now. Thank you.
Kirklees Council, along with Wicker, Calderdale Council, pardon me, are proposing a road scheme that will involve the widening of the A644 and a new link road, which will go from Leeds Road to Bradley Junction, and then join up with Wakefield Road. The widening of Wakefield Road will require the destruction of ancient woodland, whilst the link road will cut right through the middle of an existing nature reserve. 6 hectares of irreplaceable ancient woodland will be lost. The link road will require the construction of a viaduct in order to cross the railway and the River Calder. These currently undisturbed environments are havens for valuable wildlife, such as otters and bats. Sorry, I'm very nervous. We object to these plans in the strongest possible terms. Firstly, because they destroy irreplaceable woodland. Secondly, because they fly in the face of the Council's declaration of a climate emergency. We have a number of questions we would like to ask the Council. Kirklees Hall and the woodland is a listed Grade 2 heritage asset in its own right, as well as being an important landscape feature that affects the setting of Grade 1 listed Kirklees Hall. As a custodian and protector of heritage assets, why does the Council think it is acceptable to damage these particular heritage assets in this way? 2. National Planning Policy Framework states, development resulting in the loss or deterioration of irreplaceable habitats, such as ancient woodland and ancient or veteran trees, should be refused, unless there are wholly exceptional reasons. The Woodland Trust, in their objection to this proposal, state, there is no wholly exceptional reason for the development of this location, and as such, the proposed route options should not be taken forward on the grounds that they do not comply with national planning policy. What is the Council's response to this? As you are intending to build through a nature reserve, disrupt a valuable river habitat and destroy 6 hectares of ancient woodland, has an ecology report been done? Have tree officers conducted a report into tree loss, habitat loss? Has a tree report been conducted? Has an environmental impact survey been conducted? This road expansion scheme has run into opposition already. The plans to widen Leeds Road have upset residents and businesses alike. Historic England were involved in the decision to overturn previous plans for an industrial estate on the Kirklees Hall estate, and Robin Hood's grave. As the Council will remember, there was a considerable national publicity generated by the local plan hearings and a large petition signed by over 5,000 people against the proposed damage to Robin Hood's grave. These concerns have not gone away. The road is a threat to this valuable heritage site. What is the Council's response to this? The Council has legal obligations to improve air quality. Leeds Road, Cooper Bridge, M62, These are all areas of high pollution. It's been well established that large trees clean the air, lock CO2, produce oxygen. How will the felling of 6 hectares of woodland and a wooded nature reserve next to these pollution hotspots help you reach your clean air targets? The options put forward for consultation are basically all the same, all following the same route. What consideration has been given to alternative routes that avoid cutting down ancient woodland? As we know, mature trees are a much needed asset in the fight against climate change. As already mentioned, the Woodland Trust has objected to these proposals in the strongest possible terms. It was noted that their objection was not included in the publicly available consultation report. Is there a reason for this? The Council has signed a pledge to be carbon neutral by, well, rather...
You've got 30 seconds left, 30 seconds.
Okay. Finally, I ask you to think about this. When the chainsaws are out and the felling of these ancient trees begin, how do you think the press and the public will react? How do you think this action will make you look to the people of Kirklees, to the rest of the country? The Council's laudable aspiration to lead the way on environmental issues and climate change will be ruined for good.
Thank you for that, Councillor McBride.
Thank you, William Murad. Thank you for the presentation. I do appreciate your concerns, but we need to put this issue into perspective. We are fully aware of the National Policy Planning Framework, which refers to exceptional reasons. If the Council proposal for Cooper Bridge, including the infrastructure proposals, had been inconsistent with the National Planning Guidance, the local plan would not have been approved. The circumstances are exceptional because this scheme is one of the most significant in West Yorkshire to reduce congestion and in turn reduce significantly carbon usage and noxious pollutants. To do nothing accepts that our greatest congestion point in Kirklees should not be addressed. The wood is of 8 hectares and part of it would be affected in order to straighten the road. The Council will have to prove to both Calderdale Council and to Wicker that the measures to offset whatever loss are sufficient to offset the negative impact. On one of the affected roads, the A62, we are planning an additional hectare of green space as part of the scheme itself. But there would be significant additional offsetting measures to compensate, which take account of the maturation process. None of the authorities concerned, Calderdale, ourselves and Wicker, will mindlessly reduce the size of existing woodland. The measures proposed to compensate will have to be sufficient to meet the criteria set down by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which will have to evaluate the benefits of the scheme, not merely in terms of economic and social improvement, but also to assess its impact on reducing congestion and in turn carbon production. In short, there has to be a significant net environmental improvement. I assure you that process will be fulfilled.
Thank you for attending and presenting your deputation. Thank you. Next deputation, please. Welcome to the meeting. Please can you introduce yourself and the subject matter of your deputation. You have 5 minutes. You can start your deputation now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My name's Chris Herring. I represent Kirklees Climate Emergency Group. And together with Gideon Richards, I've been an official observer to the Climate Emergency Working Party. Gideon and I have done everything we could to support the Working Party in its work. It's now 10 months since you passed the climate emergency motion. You quoted David Attenborough at the time. We're facing a man-made disaster of global scale. Time is running out. I'm here today to remind councillors again of the urgent need for action on climate emergency. Since your declaration in January, no effective actions have yet taken place. Yet the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has been unequivocal. The clock is ticking loudly. We've only a few short years to start to radically turn things round, to have a chance of limiting the very worst effects of the climate crisis. We're pleased to see that the Working Party report is on the agenda for discussion at today's meeting. It is a start. However, this is an emergency, as you've declared. So we ask you, where is the urgency? With all due respect to all contributors to the Working Party, and recognising the challenges faced by local authorities, we have to say that this report lacks ambition or any real sense of urgency. For example, my own area of professional expertise is energy efficiency in buildings. The level of aspiration in this report on building energy efficiency is well behind that what some local authorities are already doing right now. This report puts Kirklees well behind what other local authorities are doing. But much more important than this, it's simply not commensurate with the nature of the crisis we face. Every day we receive further reminders of the urgency of the crisis. We've got terrible fires in the US and Australia, unprecedented tropical storms, melting glaciers, rising sea level, flooding in Venice today, and even closer to home, flooding. They all remind us that our planetary systems are changing very rapidly. Mark Carney, the Governor of the Bank of England, has recently warned that we could see abrupt collapse of our global financial systems if we don't start to urgently address the climate crisis. Only last week, 11,000 scientists from across 153 nations endorsed a statement warning that without urgent action, the world's people face untold suffering due to the climate crisis. The statement was published on the 40th anniversary of the very first World Climate Conference, which was held in Geneva in 1979. It was based on analysis of more than 40 years of publicly available data covering a range of measures from energy use to deforestation and carbon emissions. The scientists report that urgent changes needed include replacing fossil fuels with low-carbon renewables and other cleaner sources of energy, alongside implementing massive energy-saving practice. Protecting and restoring natural systems, the forests we've just been hearing about. There's forests, grasslands, wetlands, peatlands, mangroves, seagrasses, which all store carbon. There is no time to lose. We should remember that scientists professionally tend to be extremely cautious in what they say, basing everything on firm empirical evidence. Yet these 11,000 scientists have concluded that the climate crisis has arrived and is accelerating faster than most scientists expected. It's more severe than anticipated, threatening natural ecosystems and the fate of humanity. So we all need to act. We just heard the compassion for members of this council. We need compassion for future generations. If we don't act, we simply leave a truly terrifying legacy for future generations, our children and our grandchildren. There's a clear need for action at national government level, but all local authorities have their part to play too. We urge Kirklees to step up.
You've got
step
30
up your
seconds
ambition.
left.
Thank you. Working together with the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. You are our elected representatives. We'll work with you in any way we can, but now is the time for you to show true leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mather.
Chris, thank you for your deputation, and I appreciate your concerns. And we recognise the emergency, and officers have been working incredibly hard in the background
For example, I know it's taken 9 or 10 months, but just because we've been writing the report doesn't mean the work of the council stops. We have already taken to council the environmental impact assessment, which will ensure that everything we do is seen through that lens. The report also arrives to council at a very opportunistic moment when we are in the process of working up budgets, so service heads will be looking to ensure that their service is seen through the lens of climate emergency and develop the plans and recommendations of the report. We are currently also working up, so it's very unfair when people stand and say we're not doing anything. We are currently working up the terms and reference of the Kirklees Commission. The Youth Summit is being planned as we speak. Lots have been rolled out or is rolling out, lots of initiatives which we need to communicate on all the billboards. We need to shout and be proud as we commence this very important journey to solving the problem of climate emergency. We will work with our people, the place, and partnerships to influence others and to encourage and enable us to meet the climate emergency. But can I say, compassion without resources is not good enough, and we are willing to put our money where our mouth is, and hopefully the budget process will demonstrate that in February. Thank you very much.
Thank you for attending and to present your deputation. Thank you. Are there any petitions? No. Item 7, to receive for information the minutes of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The minutes are here for noting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes? Councillor Hall, David Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to speak on the minutes and also of other things that are going on within the Combined Authority at the moment. You will see within the minutes that we did discuss the medium-term financial strategy and the budget for next year and beyond. And I want to link this to the Combined Authority's support for declaring a climate emergency. Members will know that back in July, the Combined Authority declared a climate emergency. I have to say I didn't support that at the time because I don't feel that the Combined Authority has the tools that will actually bring any of this about. However, it was declared. The Combined Authority have said they will move to make sure that our region is zero carbon by 2038. Given that there are two things which must happen to achieve that. First of all, people have to start living their lives differently. I think that's a given, and sometimes probably quite drastically differently. And the other thing is, it's going to need one hell of a lot of money putting in to invest in some of the things that are going to be needed to offset carbon. We've heard from Councillor Mather just a few minutes ago, compassion without resources is not good enough, which is right. Now, what brings me to the nub of what I'm trying to say is that Councillor Pandor and others voted at the Combined Authority to support the climate emergency, and yet there are no extra resources within the budgets or the planned budgets from the Combined Authority to bring this about. Given that all the money that the Combined Authority spends comes from somewhere else, either in grants from the government or from the member constituent councils, will Councillor Pandor commit to us that he is committed to putting Kirklees money into the combined authority in order to effect some of the things which needs to happen to bring about that net carbon budget by 2038.
Councillor Pandor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Dave, for the question. Just reflecting back to the LGA conference in 2019, which was held before the Combined Authority adopted this. There's a drive, there's a political will nationally to actually do something about this. And you're absolutely right. The budget is a massive issue. And one of the debates I was having, whether to actually bring this paper to this council meeting or to wait for the debate to take place in January, was a deliberate thing that I actually consciously did. Because, Mr. Mayor, we are in the middle of the election. My party has been very, very clear. They're going to launch their manifesto, and one of the things they're going to do is put in a number of green policy initiatives, because even if we had the resources at a local level, the amount of impact we will make in terms of addressing the bigger issues that are so important to us, yeah, it'll be literally a drop in the ocean, if that. So this means a national strategy across the country to make sure that in the election, this is actually a massive priority for all parties. It doesn't matter if you're Labour, Lib Dem, Green, or any other party. That's why this will be a massive election campaign from our party. We will put a budget forward that will be a balanced budget, and we'll actually put the money on the table to actually address the issues that we are actually talking about. In terms of the Combined Authority and the LGA, they are fully committed in terms of actually addressing the issues that we've talked about. And now the LGA, it's actually controlled by the Conservatives, but on a cross-party basis, we've actually made sure that this actually is top of the agenda. In terms of what the Combined Authority does, that will be actually coming out in its medium-term financial plan, and you were there at that meeting, and you made a valid point, Dave, and we have to make sure that we actually realign our resources to actually make sure that the impact assessments are carried out and schemes that are approved do actually address the issues to actually make sure that we actually address the 2038 target. Thanks very much.
Councillor Cooper.
Compassion without resources is meaningless. So where might those resources come from? Where might we actually manage to get some resources to actually fuel the compassion we have to address climate change? Well, I think we ought to start with the £100 million that is being used to support the expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport by West Yorkshire Combined Authority. To look at that money and actually say, perhaps we ought not to be
Councillor Cooper,
fueling.
can you keep to the point what we're talking about?
Actually,
please? Thank
100% keeping to the point. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The minutes, please. The minutes.
It's the minutes. We heard from. I am keeping to the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. I am keeping to the debate that we've been talking about. And so we should certainly be looking at that money and redirecting it to things which would actually reduce carbon emissions. And I know of various people in the party, actually, that represents the councillors here, who are actually think the same thing. And yet somehow or other, we don't seem to be able to get that message across from Kirklees to West Yorkshire Combined Authority. So that needs to be done. We need to have a shift of emphasis. We're spending the money on the wrong things. And I really would like to hear a statement from the leader saying that he will no longer support the expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport using West Yorkshire Combined Authority funds.
Councillor Pandor.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Cooper does actually address a very important issue. Last time he tried to bring a motion forward and we put an amendment in which fully reflects what you're saying. One of the things that the Combined Authority has done very, very clearly, to meet its 2038 carbon reduction target, all schemes will have to actually pass a certain threshold and actually make sure that they actually achieve the standard. And I don't want to say too many things, but just wait in terms of what will happen in the future, because the scheme that have been approved doesn't mean to say that they're going ahead. There will be a review. And the only way we can actually achieve that target is actually make sure that we actually have plans and actions that deliver on that. Thank you.
Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been hearing a lot already about commitment, drive, and we're going to hear more about that in future items. But reflecting on these minutes, we can look at how Kirklees is comparing with our neighbour and other authorities. If we look at the issue on page 17, we see reference to a Kirklees cycling and walking early gateway project. If we look around West Yorkshire, if we look at Manchester, if we look at South Yorkshire, the West Midlands, London, they have all appointed sustainable transport champions. Either brought somebody in from the outside, or often in West Yorkshire, they are elected members. When we move to the substantive item on climate change, how are we going to see the commitment from Cabinet to have a climate change champion who is responsible for driving that? This is something that we used to have years ago. We used to have elected member champions under the Cycling England project. That stopped 10 years ago when Labour took over. So why are we not doing whatever the West Yorkshire Authority is doing? Leeds have got Councillor Carlisle, who has input into all the Cabinet decisions. Bradford have got the Labour Councillor Taj Salam, who I've been out cycling with and is committed to seeing cycling and walking improved. There's nobody in Kirklees driving this forward. There's nobody in Kirklees dealing with those sections of the community. So when we start to talk about climate change, we've got to talk about modal shift. They're not going to be getting people onto different forms of transport if all they're doing is leaving, with respect, Peter McBride to tell us how to move into different modes. We need to have this with somebody with vision. We need to have something with ambition. And I wish the Cabinet would get hold of this and get somebody appointed to do the job. Thank you.
Councillor Pando.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're in danger of going to the debate that's going to follow this item. But I will give some assurances now, because I didn't want to say this now. I want to save it for the next item. But let me be very, very clear. As we move into the budget process will actually put in significant resources into the exact things what you're talking about. And I'm not going to tell you what they are, because the budget process will actually take care of that. But let me give you some examples. Electric vehicle charging points. We need a proper strategy within Kirklees that will link into a strategy across West Yorkshire. Our fleet vehicles, they are not fit for purpose. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be refreshing all our vehicles to make sure that they're actually electric vehicles and have the minimum impact on the environment. There are other initiatives, but I don't want to go too much detail. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm announcing now that the budget will actually take full account of what Councillor Bolt is so concerned about.
Thank you. Item 8, page 25, Kirklees Climate Emergency Declaration and Kirklees Air Quality Strategy and the 5-year of Air Quality Action Plan. I will now introduce Richard Hollinson to give a presentation to the Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this officer presentation is to set out the international, national, regional and local context for climate change and air quality issues, provide progress on the Council resolutions made in March 2018 and in January 2019 regarding air quality and the climate emergency, to summarise the work of the Climate Emergency Working Party, to highlight current achievements by Kirklees Council identified through this work, and to set out recommendations and next steps. The damaging effects of climate changes are being felt on a global scale. If we can reduce global emissions faster, then we will hold warming to lower levels and we can limit the effects. Nationally, we can use known technologies to reduce emissions. Kirklees can play its part, but we need to change the way we are doing things, and we need to do this quickly. We are all experiencing the roller coaster of climate-related weather changes and experiencing the impacts to our cost. At the same time, long-term exposure to man-made air pollution is having a big impact on human health. Within a regional context, the West Yorkshire Combined Authority has declared its own climate emergency, as you've heard, and the Leeds City Region Enterprise Partnership, the LEP, has set out an aim to become the UK's first zero-carbon city region. Other organisations, including our neighbouring authorities, are also setting out their own actions. We already have a number of plans, programmes, policies and strategies for Kirklees which can help us move towards lower carbon emissions. And action on climate change will also help the Council make progress on all of its shared outcomes. It can help underpin how we deliver our strategies and plans, influence new policies and decisions, and impact on the way in which we run parts of our organisation and those of others. We do need to address all carbon emissions. Some sectors are further beyond the Council's direct influence, and in the case of power, progress has been made significantly to decarbonise that sector in the last few years. But transport is a sector where society is not making the required reductions, and it is an area where the Council can take a lead role in influencing change. Transport emissions are also one of the biggest causes of our air quality issues. We do need to address all sources of carbon emissions, but transport is an important focus. It allows us to address climate change and air quality issues together, bringing multiple benefits to our partners, residents and businesses. Implementing changes will come with a cost, but there are also significant opportunities and benefits to Kirklees in moving to a lower carbon economy. These include reduced energy and fuel bills, efficiencies for business in a cleaner and greener economy, and increases in health and prosperity. As a response to this, the Council motion in January 2019 declared the climate emergency for Kirklees, and shortly after, the Climate Emergency Working Party was established. A separate Council motion agreed in March 2018 set out actions for the Council regarding air quality. Recommendations set out in the Officer report regarding climate change and air quality, together with the Working Party's report to full Council, comply with these Council motions. The Working Party process captured a significant amount of current and potential activity regarding climate change issues from across the whole Council as part of its audit. The report of the Working Party and its recommendations are set out in the reports to Council. As well as setting out recommendations for the Council to take forward, this work has highlighted a number of Council achievements in the light of carbon reduction measures. Some examples include the Council is broadly on target to achieve its 2020-21 carbon emissions reductions target of a 40% reduction from a 2005-06 baseline. 60% of street lighting in Kirklees has been converted to environmentally friendly LEDs. Innovations in the way our catering service works with suppliers and schools to reduce waste has led to accreditation with the Food for Life Silver Cater Mark. An award-winning project by our Urban Traffic Control Service at Bradley Junction to add technology called virtual emissions monitoring to existing traffic lights to improve the efficiency of the system and reduce pollution. In the last 6 years, over 1,000 council properties have had wall insulation and almost 2,000 have received loft insulation. Through a deep clean of the Ravensthorpe area, we have dramatically reduced fine particulate pollution in the area, to the point where DEFRA are satisfied we can remove the air quality management area. The Council has completed a successful feasibility study into the potential for a Huddersfield heat network. The Council has successfully accessed external funding in order to deliver rapid charge points for electric charging vehicles. And the Council has taken the lead in a funded transportation freight recognition scheme called EcoStars that aims to help fleet operators improve efficiency, reduce fuel consumption and emissions and make cost savings. And the Council is leading on the delivery of the West Yorkshire Low Emission Strategy. The key officer recommendation is that the Council, together with our partners, residents and businesses, aims for net zero carbon emissions and be air pollution free by 2038. Officers are recommending an approach based on a phased approach. This recognises that we need to work with partners, residents and businesses, as we cannot meet our ambitions acting on our own. It also means that the implications of different actions will be carefully assessed and agreed. Officers have recommended that the Council...
Sorry, point of order. Could I just clarify? This is a reference from Cabinet. With respect to Mr Hollinston, we are not now hearing officer recommendations. What we are hearing is Cabinet recommendations as approved yesterday, if I understand the procedure correctly.
This is the working party, not...
This is the working.
But it was referred by Cabinet for consideration yesterday.
Thank you. I'll refrain from using the phrase officer recommendations for the rest of the presentation. It's been agreed by Cabinet to take forward the priority actions identified by the Working Party as phase 1 of an ambitious programme of activity to address the climate emergency. These actions include the adoption of an ambitious target for Kirklees to achieve district-wide net zero carbon emissions no later than 2038, to publicly disclose council and district carbon emissions, to boost woodland and green infrastructure creation via the existing White Rose Forest Partnership, to implement an extensive communications and engagement campaign to encourage council staff and Kirklees residents to make a positive difference to the environment, to work with partners to develop, initiate and establish a Kirklees Climate Commission and Kirklees Green Charter, to develop a Kirklees Youth Summit and campaign for engaging with young people around the climate emergency, and to support the West Yorkshire Combined Authority pledge for the Leeds City region to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2038. The Air Quality Strategy and Action Plan will now be submitted to DEFRA and subsequently be brought to Council for adoption, together with immediate commencement of air quality actions where feasible. The Council are legally obliged to produce an action plan detailing measures to reduce pollution. The aims of the Air Quality Action Plan and Strategy are to reduce emissions in Kirklees. Transport is a particular area of focus, such as tackling emissions from heavy good vehicles, to increase electric vehicle use, actions to move vehicles more efficiently, reduce emissions at existing junctions, and work with schools and the public to look at air quality issues, sustainable travel to schools, and measures to tackle anti-idling. We would achieve this ambition by working with people, partners and places required by a corporate plan under our shared outcomes. The Working Party quickly established that action to tackle the climate emergency should be a district-wide approach as opposed to merely covering the operations of the Council. The Council is considered to have a key role in influencing and changing the behaviour of residents and our businesses. We intend to support residents, businesses and visitors to Kirklees to reduce their emissions and build on our recent place-based working programmes. And we will collaborate with partners locally, regionally and on the national stage, particularly through the proposed Kirklees Climate Commission and Green Charter. In terms of improving outcomes for children, it should be recognised that health effects caused by poor air quality are more acutely experienced by children, and children and young people are key to taking action on climate change, and the recommendations commit us to developing and hosting a youth summit. As I've set out, the actions recommended and agreed by Cabinet set out a phased work programme to fully consider the corporate implications of an ambitious long-term commitment to tackling climate change by the Council and its partners, building on the recommendations made by the Working Party and taking into account recommendations made by others. These are some of the outcomes which are likely to come through the district's ongoing commitment to climate change. Next step actions could focus on walking, cycling and public transport initiatives, together with actions which provide warm homes, generate lower carbon jobs. In summary, officers have put forward recommendations to Cabinet yesterday which would allow for the immediate implementation of a number of initial actions to address the climate emergency and address air quality issues. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that. Can I just ask all members, when somebody's speaking, if you need to speak and you think you don't agree with that person, you need to press the button and get permission to get up and speak, because it's a bit rude, I think. You know, somebody's speaking and members just stand up and start shouting. That's not fair. So in future, if anybody wants to speak, press your button, and I've got a big screen in front of me. I can see if somebody wants to speak and I'll bring you in. Thank you. Councillor Murdo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am pleased to bring the Kirklees Climate Emergency Declaration and the Kirklees Air Quality Strategy and 5-year Action Plan to Council. Two reports went to Cabinet yesterday, the climate emergency and air quality, as the two are interrelated. The air quality report is a detailed, technical and scientific piece of work which provides a comprehensive account at district and ward levels. The Air Quality Action Plan feeds into and supports the Climate Emergency Action Plan, which aims to make the borough carbon neutral by 2030. I would like to begin by thanking the members of the Climate Emergency Working Party and the officers for their sheer dedication and hard work over the past 9 months, because it concluded in October. The Working Party has made 7 fantastic recommendations which the Cabinet wishes to further enhance and develop. We know climate emergency is the biggest challenge we face. The recent floods are an example of that. We can't continue with business as usual. We need to deliver a green industrial revolution that will lower bills, improve homes, reduce emissions and create jobs. For example, 60% of packaging is plastic. 99% of that plastic is made from fossil fuels. So I'm going to give you an example from waste management. We are continuing to develop a new recycling and waste strategy for Kirklees that will set out the vision for the borough. This vision will build on this work as well as provide the right opportunities and conditions for our communities and businesses to minimise waste and maximise recycling. Delivering this vision will lead to some of the most significant investments ever made by this authority, ensuring that people in Kirklees experience a high quality, clean, sustainable and green environment. This was never going to be a quick process, and there is an incredible amount of work being undertaken in the background to ensure that we bring forward is not only ambitious and deliverable, but also provides the right opportunities for our communities to have their influence. I believe we urgently need additional regulatory powers, resources and support for regional and local authorities in order to lead public opinion, reframe the debate, and as a public health reframe the debate as a public health emergency, which will need targeted mass-scale advertising. Hence, a national government framework is necessary to ensure we can take advantage of opportunities and make the required impact. We must ensure that our climate change initiatives do not have a negative impact on our vulnerable communities and leave them behind. I ask that Council receives and notes the decisions of Cabinet as tabled regarding the climate emergency and air quality. I will now pass you on to the Chair of the Working Party, Councillor Murgatroyd.
Councillor Murgatroyd.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And I'd also like to thank all the members who served on the Working Party. And I'd like to particularly thank Councillor Andrew Pinnock for his positive approach, ready wit and sensible contributions, especially on tree management. I'd also like to thank our observers from the Kirklees Climate Emergency Group, Chris Herring, Gideon Richards and Dylan V80's Glennon of the Youth Council for their excellent input. Dylan had a particularly onerous responsibility to be the voice of his whole generation, but he did it well. Mr Mayor, this is a serious piece of public policy making which deliberately covered the whole range of the Council's activities. Our first step was to initiate a dynamic audit right across the Council. Now, the dynamic part was about asking not just what we do now and have done in the past, but also to identify possible opportunities and improvements that could be form proposals. And we heard from over 25 officers from across a broad range of service areas who presented evidence to the Working Party. And could I just bring members' attention also to Table 1 on page 55? Because the audit actually covered the work of a number of other service areas which are set out there. Now, these will also form part of the work stream if this report's agreed tonight. So, on behalf of the Working Party, I'd also like to thank all the officers who gave evidence, but particularly John Atkinson and Penny Bunker, who served the Working Party with professionalism and competence. Now, it's probably hoping too much for complete consensus, and as colleagues will have seen from page 41, one member of the Working Party, Councillor Cooper, didn't feel able to sign it off. But however, Councillor Cooper, I do hope, as I outline the main features of the report, I'll be able to reassure you on some of the issues. And I do genuinely believe that this report represents a real step change, and it's worth supporting. So now to the substantive issues. Firstly, let's look briefly at the key zero carbon target by 2038. Now, members should be in no doubt turning away from a carbon-based economy will be an incredibly challenging endeavour on a scale and at a pace that no human society has ever done before. So the Working Party was very clear that we need to build in robust reporting and monitoring mechanisms to ensure the public can hold us to account, to ensure all of us here can hold ourselves to account. And we therefore propose a number of measures which include annual reports on progress, independent reports, public and transparent disclosure of emissions, and members will also, I hope, have noticed that we saw over and again, to wherever possible, to set deadlines and targets for the many work streams that will flow from this report. So, Councillor Smage and the scrutiny panel, I hope you're going to have a lot to get your teeth stuck into, and you should. Mr Mayor, governments and local authorities have set many targets in the past. Let's make sure, for the sake of future generations, that these are ones we meet. But ultimately, we need to mobilise as a community, and to ensure this happens, the Working Party was very clear on the need for a vigorous and ongoing communication strategy. And I won't repeat the points made, particularly facing and aiming at young people. And I'm really hoping the Youth Summit next year is going to be a landmark event. And we also need to create a body fully representative and rooted in the community that can take work around the climate emergency forward across the district. We need... that's the climate emergency, I don't know. Thank you. Did you press your button? Right, so an activist Kirklees commission can make a significant difference and help unleash the collective energy and genius of the people of Kirklees. But can I just appeal to us all here as members as well? We have a responsibility to get the message out that actually it's not too late and if we act now, we can address this emergency. But of course, carbon emissions don't respect local authority boundaries. The Working Party report therefore believes all West Yorkshire councils in the combined authority need to look again at existing schemes and test them against the target to become net zero by 2038. And the majority of members of the Working Party therefore agreed a strong catch-all definition in the report about which sorts of schemes should be re-examined, and the wording for that can be found on page 71. And it says it includes all transport and infrastructure schemes. And just in case anyone is worried, that includes air travel, of course, because that's a form of transport, and airport expansion, because that's infrastructure. Now, there's a genuinely substantive issue here, and it's been mentioned earlier. What may have appeared common sense transport or infrastructure development in the past may well have become nonsense in the light of the emergency. And that's why the Working Party proposes a robust mechanism needs to be adopted at a regional level to test schemes. Now, obviously, the whole airport thing's pretty controversial, so I'm going to just use this as an example, okay? As colleagues know, the Leeds City Regions previously planned to financially support transport links to Leeds Bradford Airport. And the publicly stated purpose is to encourage a rise in passenger numbers from 4 million in 2018 to 7.1 million by 2030. Now, I'm not very good at maths, but my partner's a maths teacher, and she tells me that's a 77.5% increase. Okay, so can I just be totally clear? Any expansion on this scale would obviously fly a jumbo jet through our regional targets. So it's clearly in the interest of all partner authorities for Leeds City Region to do things. First, meaningfully reassess funding of improved links to Leeds Bradford Airport, and second, to carry out an extensive environmental impact assessment. And as I think Councillor Pando very clearly said, actually, once that's done, if we work positively with partners, then that should deal with that issue. The report also sets out many other excellent proposals, and these are set out on pages 10 to 20. I haven't got time to go through them. Okay, I just wanted to address the issue of phasing. Does this imply that there's a pecking order? Phase 1, phase 2? No, it doesn't. Okay? Because I'm sure that all the members present agree that good public policy has to be properly risk assessed, financed, resourced and relevant stakeholders consulted. And I'm pretty new here, but I have been told by members who've been here a bit longer that sometimes, you know, things done with good intentions about the environment didn't always work out quite as well as they should. So it's clearly important that we really make sensible public policy. Now, some areas, especially where work's already underway, can be relatively speedy. Others, longer consideration is required. But I just want to reassure everyone, whether designated phase 1 or 2, if agreed tonight, all these proposals are immediately feeding into the Council's policy-making process. So given the time constraints, just wanted to highlight 2 particular areas. First, economic strategy. Now, Richard has pointed out that climate change is actually going to open up loads of new economic opportunities.
Can you wind up now, please?
Yeah, okay, all right. Sorry, well, I'll have to skip the specific examples. Just to conclude, okay, obviously, we are facing an incredible challenge here. We need more staff, we need more money, we need more legal powers. But I just wanted to finish by saying that I hope all of us in this room today can get behind this agenda, because we're going to need determination, we're going to need a steady focus, we're going to need a willingness to take risks, and I hope we can unite together, get this job done. It's not business as usual, but the work has just begun. So please support this report.
Is that seconded? Seconded. Is that seconded, yeah? Thank you. Are there any comments? Councillor Yastra Hussain.
Do I press that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome this report on climate emergency and it fits quite well in relation to the impact on our community. I look forward to getting involved and would like to use a real life example that adds to the urgency towards that. It is real
And it's... Oh. Is it? Okay. I welcome this report on climate emergency and it fits quite well in relation to the impact on our community. I look forward to getting involved and like to use a real life example that adds to the urgency towards that. It is real and it's already happening, and we all acknowledge that in this room. Human-caused climate change has already been proven to increase the risk of heat waves and wildfires, floods and extreme rainfall, with implication for humans, animals and the environment locally, nationally and globally. Just recently, my constituents went out before the flood warnings were announced. During their journey, they became stuck in the countryside where they found the stream had burst its embankments. My constituents were both stuck in a car. Water was rising rapidly as they called emergency services and were so overloaded, and they were told they would respond as soon as they could. Facing a life-dangerous situation, the water had now reached just above their waists. Coming out of the car was just as dangerous as remaining in it. At this very moment, the water was rising very rapidly. Both wife and husband managed to climb on the top of the roof of the car and shout for help. Miraculously, they were heard by people nearby. They came to their rescue and emergency services who arrived shortly after. The couple were saved. These constituents were new parents, fearing they may have never returned home that night. Family members could have either lost a daughter or a son, sister or brother. This is one story, members, where they were saved. Others have sadly not been so lucky. At this point, I would also like to commend and thank all emergency services who also risked their lives to save people. In this case, the family that lived nearby that saved this couple explained how excessive rain had caused the stream to become a river. This is not just pure coincidence, members. This is the effect of climate change. Climate change increases the risk of extreme rainfall and thus floods, with devastating implications on people's lives and the environment. Hence why this report has come at a timely manner and does commit to planting more trees and vegetation to help reduce the risk of floods. Our Labour administration is looking at locality-based fit-for-purpose plans for each area. This means that vulnerable sections of our community who may otherwise get overlooked or left behind are not negatively impacted. So our Labour administration has looked at incentivising climate initiatives for all community members. As one of the young members of this council, I welcome this report and its suggestion and look forward to their implementation by our Labour administration. I'm keen and enthusiastic as a councillor on starting from education and awareness and working toward the overall picture of alleviating climate emergency. It's our Labour administration that's taken a real step forward in true leadership in protecting the home we live in for our future generations to come. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Murgatroyd for his very eloquent speech in which he called for all members to get behind this agenda. And I think really every member who votes for further action on the climate emergency and receiving this report should seriously consider how they set the appropriate example to local communities. For example, will members who vote for this give up air travel? Will members who vote for this give up their private vehicles if they emit CO2? If we adopt this, we need to set the right example and speak from a position of honesty on the impacts on residents quality of life and the changes they may need to make, and the impacts on their household budgets as well, because switching to net zero nationally by 2050, no one really, obviously 2038 locally, but the national target's currently 2050. Nobody really knows how much that is going to cost. It's been estimates run up to £1 trillion in that time frame. That is going to mainly fall on businesses, increased manufacturing costs through energy costs and so on, and residents for the same reason. And zero-emission vehicles are expensive too. So I hope this doesn't prove to be just one huge act of virtue signalling, and we set the right example in how we lead our own lives if we're expecting our residents to do the same, because they will be watching us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you to Councillor Murgatroyd and the Working Party in putting this document together. And I'd just like to say a few words. The people who will be most affected by our actions on the environment are young people. It is their future that rests on all our shoulders. What we do now matters. This is an emergency. Yet it is now 12 months since the climate change report was released, and just a few measures have and since that time only a few measures have actually been put in place. This emergency is serious. There is a need for strong commitment from the council. This must be demonstrated, but it is not in evidence in this document. Consistency must be embedded in every policy. It is simply not good enough for a council to declare a climate emergency, then avoid dealing with a motion linked to the climate emergency or a motion aimed at improving air quality around schools. Such motions should be prioritised on the agenda. After all, this is an emergency. It is vital then that this is cross-party and it is not political. There is a need for achievable targets so aims can be turned into reality in a short space of time. An inclusive approach with full support from the public is crucial to achieving the target set for 2038. No one should be overlooked. Everyone should be listened to. A citizens' assembly, which would involve the wider public, would be a good way to go forward. While the Working Party have recommended a Kirklees Climate Commission of partners and organisations, this is not fully inclusive. It does not go far enough. No date has been set for its formation. A Climate Emergency Youth Summit is to be organised to engage young people and seek out their ideas. But again, no dates or details are given. It has been recognised transport is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions at 23%. The Air Quality and Action Plan proposed to tackle HGV emissions, working with businesses on projects such as EcoStars, but no details are provided as to when this will start, how quickly it can be implemented, or how it will be measured for its success. This council is to increase electric vehicle use and increase the council's own fleet of electric vehicles. Charging points for electric vehicles are going to be implemented across the district to encourage use of electric vehicles, but none of this will help alleviate the congestion on our roads. The council has stated it is committed to encourage walking and cycling and meet West Yorkshire Transport Plan's targets for a 300% increase in trips made by bicycle by 2027, yet there is no mention in this document of providing charging points for electric bikes, no work schemes for council employees to encourage them to come to work by bike, or any e-bike schemes. As a council, just paying lip service is simply not good enough for the radical action that is needed, and this document and its policies, I'm afraid, do not go far enough.
Thank you for that. Councillor Opal.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to start off by thanking a few people. So I just want to thank the Chair, Richard Murgatroyd, for the work he has done on the working group. just wanted to mention John. I know you had to do a lot of work throughout the process, so thank you, John, for all the work you did throughout the period. And I also just want to mention the Kirklees Climate Emergency Group. Many of them are sat in the other room. They've been involved in the process throughout. They've been lobbying us continuously, and I hope they will continue to be involved as we go forward. I recognise that obviously some people have some misgivings about this report, and we have to continue to work to build that trust amongst members, amongst our residents, amongst our young people. All I can say is that for the members of the working group, this is something I feel we all feel very strongly about, something that we want to tackle head on, and it's something that we will continue to push also with our fellow colleagues in Cabinet. Importantly, we now have a target for net zero carbon emissions for 2038, and I think that's really important that we've got that set. We've also looked at transparency, and we'll be publicly disclosing council and district carbon emissions. This is really important. It means that we're going to be, people can continually check up on us and push us continually. We must continue to do this. We've talked about establishing a Kirklees Climate Commission and a Green Charter, and the Kirklees Climate Commission will involve a number of partners, and we must ensure there is independence on that commission, and I'm certain that we will do that. And most importantly, we've had young people involved in the process. I do want to thank Dylan and the Youth Council and Michelle as well. They will be leading the way on the Youth Summit, and that's perhaps why we don't have some of the clear timelines on that, but they are setting the agenda on that, and that is important, and they're doing that and not us, and that we're not trying to take that over. Just one of the recommendations that I particularly want to mention is around residential developments on council-owned land. And we have recommended that there should be an aspiration to build to passive house standard on council-owned land. And this should happen where possible. And also we should be doing this as soon as possible. And we've already got sites, and I know in my own ward we've got the Bradley site, and I've already talked to Cabinet members about this myself and with my colleagues, and we must move forward with that one. That's a really crucial one, as is how we look at infrastructure, and Richard's mentioned about transport infrastructure, and also looking at our key policies and making sure we're looking again under the lens of climate change. I just want to say this is the start of the process. We all need to keep involved. We need to make sure we're continually pushing this agenda. That includes people sat here, the people sat in the room across the way. It means all residents, all young people. We need to look at national funding. This is an issue. We haven't been funding as well as we could be. But hopefully with a Labour government, we will be better funded, and we can push forward on this agenda a lot more than we've been able to. But just on the 12th of December, but 12th of December 2019.
Can you quiet down, everybody, please?
Thank you for your comments. Much appreciated.
Can you carry on, please?
But just to say, we do need to be radical. We all recognise that. We all play a part in this. So we can sit here and point fingers and the rest of it, but we all have to play a part in it. And, get involved and put your criticisms in if you have to, and you should do. But let's all get involved, and let's do what we should do for the residents of Kirklees and make this a better place for all of us. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Councillor Smith.
Yeah. To echo some of the other members' comments, I would acknowledge the vast amount of work that's gone into this by officers and members of the Working Party. Much of this is welcome, and there's obviously a lot of work to do. This is going to be a project which is going to be like turning around a tanker. However, I do have reservations about some of the, I think it was described as perhaps by one of our contributors as a lack of ambition. I do think the report could go a lot further. The report is very big on declarations and pledges, stated ambitions, setting up working parties, collaboration with other organisations and policy promises. What it is lacking in is actual action and timescales. And I'd like to see a lot more about what we can do, if nothing else, just to pick up the low-hanging fruit and what can the council be doing right now. So I would also echo the concerns of the public speaker. That was Dr. Richard Stowe, in respect of a lack of a tree policy. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. And also around biodiversity. There's a lot to like in this report, and there's a lot of detail and stuff to go forward with, in particular on air quality. But I do think, given that we've declared a climate emergency, what this report doesn't scream is emergency, and I think we need to address that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo some of Councillor Smith's comments around the lack of action plans and timescales. It's something I raise on a number of issues regularly through scrutiny, where we get reports, we get ambitions, we get statements. It's not clear what the outcomes are. It's not clear when they'll be achieved by, and it's not clear how they'll be assessed through that. I'd also like to have a little grump, if I may. If I ask people to look at page 220, which is about the air quality strategy, it talks in the second paragraph of the introduction about the number of transport links linking across the district, linking towns and villages, and it fails yet again to recognise the Penistone line. We have a transport link, an excellent transport link to Sheffield, but there's no reference to it in here. Now, I don't know where this report has gone yet, but I'm hoping we've got an opportunity to perhaps put that right. But it seems to be a persistent problem with this council that we don't recognise that in the south of Huddersfield we have links through to Sheffield as well as those to Leeds and to Manchester. So a bit of a grump, but hopefully we can pick that one up. I also am a little... It's unfortunate that we've decided to bring together effectively two reports and present them as one here in terms of the air quality and the climate change report. I was on scrutiny when the air quality report was brought through, and there is an enormous amount of detail in there, and I think we ought to recognise that. We talk about the 10 areas where there are breaches. What it doesn't talk about, and I think I would ask Cabinet to reflect on, is what are the next areas that are approaching breaching, and what are we doing to monitor those, and have we considered the impact of the local plan and our proposals in those areas that may bring some of those areas not necessarily even into breach but close to breach, because there's a tendency to focus on the ones that are breached and perhaps not on those that may end up there if we don't take some remedial action now. I also feel, if I'm being brutally honest, a bit underwhelmed by the climate change report for the very reasons that have already been mentioned by colleagues. I recognise that budgetary constraints meant that certain actions couldn't be put in place until we get to the budget, but I would like to have seen more ambition in terms of what it is those proposals are. I also have some concerns about Phase 2, which is described as the transformational programme. It's looking at the corporate implications for the council, but I would hope it is also looking at the implications for our residents, for neighbouring authorities, crucially businesses, but it doesn't make any mention of that. So I think there are more implications than just the implications on the council that we need to be considering. And I'm also concerned that there appears to be an abdication of accountability and responsibility by the Cabinet in that it's proposing to delegate this work to officers. Actually, I don't think that's right. This is a key policy, and that is the responsibility and accountability of the Cabinet. By all means, officers can help in working up proposals, but I don't think we should be delegating responsibility to officers as this appears to. My other concern, and whilst I have no problem at all with with a youth summit and engaging young people. And again, this is a comment I've made before when looking at the Democracy Commission. There are other groups that we should be thinking about and looking at, and there is no mention of. Older people are particularly vulnerable. Why are we not involving older people in this? Why is there not an older persons summit? Why is there not involvement of older people? What about carers and people with learning difficulties? Because obviously they are also people who probably are more directly impacted by poor air quality and potentially climate change than our younger residents. I accept that one of the good things young people are doing, I've talked about this in my own ward, is if we can get them on side, they're very good at bullying their parents into doing things. So I understand
30
this.
seconds.
All right, but I do think we need to look back at older people and how we can involve and engage them and recognise the issues that they may have as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. We've got a long list, so last is, come on. Councillor Darren O'Donovan, you're the last one now, so we're not going to add anybody else. I think we've had quite a few people from across the party debating on this. So next is Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. Climate emergency and air quality, and it seems an easy statement to trip off the tongue, but obviously a very difficult process to go through, which will need bold decisions and unique thinking. And what appears to me is that it's a report that I support quite a lot of, but some of it, the important stuff, we seem to have bimbled along and not really got into the things that will make major differences for very little money, but a lot of effort. And I need to point out a couple of those. Construction. One of the things that's been a hot topic of late in the local plan. But one of the things that I found interesting is that 12.2% of the planet's carbon is created by the change of use of land. But we continue to do it. We continue to use green space, fell trees, etc., to the benefit of the local plan, but not to the climate emergency. One of the largest human activities that produces CO2 is the production of cement. 2.5 billion tonnes of CO2 globally, just in the production of cement. Bricks, 65 billion tonnes of CO2 and 20 million tonnes of coal to produce 250 billion bricks. But we continue building the same old Lego city houses with bricks and mortar on the local plan. We also use in bricks 0.7 million hectares of land. So we really need to make some bold decisions as far as the use of land and our housing policy. Maybe it's a non-bricks and mortar building if we're really serious. Maybe we should make a statement there'll be no more greenbelt ever allocated for the use of housing. And maybe we only build in clean air zones. Which brings me on to the next statement that's in the report, which is ensure children have the best start in life. But in our local ward, Birkenshaw BBG School, circa of 1,000 pupils, dropped off at 8:15 in the morning by several hundred cars, picked up at 2:30 by another several hundred cars, right in the middle of two of the worst air pollution areas in the borough. What bold statements, what bold decisions and intelligence are we going to use for these when we go under the banner of ensuring children have the best start in life? So another bold decision, public transport. We all complain about it. We all complain and kick our heels and stomp our fists on the table when buses are cancelled, routes are cancelled. But really, we should be making better decisions, stronger decisions, and making sure that our public transport, take ownership of our public transport, not the service itself, but the contractual obligations and the delivery of it. And what we can come up with is 20-mile-an-hour zones, when in fact, talking to the police, they will accept 28 miles an hour average speed on the 20-mile-an-hour zone
Is it impactual? No, not really. It's just another tick box exercise that we've done something when we start putting 20-mile-an-hour zones in. And the last point, as far as bold decisions that I want to make, is reference to the report. The report wants to deal with the climate emergency, but then the climate emergency report is put onto 200 pages of paper circulated to 69 councillors. And what we need to realise that 1/3 of all trees felled are for paper around the world. And to deal with and negate a CO2 problem globally, we'd need a net increase of 1.2 trillion trees around the world. And by that calculation, I've worked out that the borough would need to plant 8 million trees to contribute to that loss.
Councillor Thompson, 30 seconds.
A mature tree sequests 48 pounds of carbon per annum. So Kirklees would need 8 million to contribute. So, bold decision number 3, maybe no more paper wasted and no more mature trees felled. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's been a really interesting discussion this evening, and some good points have been made, I think, across the chamber, including from some of our Conservative colleagues. Some of the points I think that Councillor Thompson has just made are really interesting ones about things like planning policy, about things like public transport policy, about things like school admission policy, and the move towards encouraging families to send children right across the borough to different schools. I do hope going forward that we move away from the position where there was not any Conservative representation in the Working Party. I think that was a real shame. Somebody like Councillor Bolt, I very much respected in the past, ideas that he's put forward in meetings like scrutiny. Just sing the praises, Martin. Yeah, sit there. But when it has come to the Working Party, unfortunately, that present has been there. So moving forward, I hope that is a development that we see, so that we can work together on this crisis, which is affecting everybody. I mainly wanted just to say a little bit about item 3 in terms of the recommendations, which is about green space, woodland creation, the natural environment. And I just wanted to make the point that important things have been happening in the last year whilst this work has been taking place. So, for example, the work of the White Rose Forest Group. I think the work of that group had become a little bit moribund. It had slowed down too much. But it really has accelerated in the last year, both in terms of things happening within the Kirklees area and the wider West Yorkshire field. We have already put together plans. Those plans have been submitted to external scrutiny for people like the Woodland Trust to look at, to people from other authorities. And they've also gone through internal scrutiny to give us the opportunity to have a look at things. Useful suggestions were made about how we can develop those things further. We've also done a tremendous amount of work in terms of approaching partners, some of them local, such as groups like River Home Connections up in the Home Valley, but also some national partners, and some partners that you might not think of, people like Network Rail. And we will be building on those partnerships to really make sure that we do our best to achieve the targets that we've set out. The report also refers to the Home and Combe Valley Natural Flood Management Operations Group. That group has been extremely active. One thing it's done is actually to change its name. It's now more catchily called the Future Landscapes Group. And that is a groundbreaking group. It includes over a dozen partners. It's held 2 really large-scale consultation events this year. The first of which, back in February, was attended by over 100 people. And then after Easter, we had a further meeting with over 140 people. There's also been a massive amount of consultation with different organisations who are working in this field. So people like Moors for the Future, who are probably the leading moorland restoration group, not just in this country, but in Europe. We've done a tremendous amount of work with people like the National Trust. And the result of that is that, building on work that's already taken place, we are carrying out absolutely groundbreaking work in terms of restoring our moorland. The moorland on our southwestern fringes is amongst the most degraded in the whole of Europe. It has been destroyed really by pollution resulting from the original Industrial Revolution. But if you look at what's happening, leaky dams have been created, there's been a restoration of diverse vegetation, especially things like...
Councillor Walker, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Especially things like planting sphagnum moss, which has a massive impact on sequestrating carbon. It's also preventing the running off and the erosion of carbon, which actually releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, as well as causing real problems for our water supply. And a little known fact that the peat bogs in this country actually are responsible for sequestering more carbon than all of the woodland.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Your time's up.
Last word, in Britain, France and Germany.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
I also would like to thank officers for the work that they put into this report. I know a lot of effort has gone into produce what's here in front of us today. Of course, it's been referenced by people that I refuse to sign off the report. That doesn't mean that I completely trash the report or think that everything in the report is wrong. But we agreed things in the last meeting that were agreed, and then they didn't appear in the report. And I think if we actually agree something in a meeting that's agreed, that is not done. And I find for Councillor Murgatroyd to shake his head, but that's what happened. In terms of phasing, we did agree that we weren't going to phase things. You could argue that perhaps that was or was not a good idea, but we agreed that we weren't going to phase things, that nothing was going to be, one item was not going to be more important than the other. We were going to work on all things at the time because it's an emergency, because that's what we need to do. I also felt that we agreed a specific reference to Leeds Bradford Airport now and the impact that would have on our targets. Now, I've heard the comments about there being a cover-all clause, which is going to cover all transport, and that somehow or other that's going to be a good thing. I hear the very positive things that have been said by members from the Labour group about how that particular £100 million project is possibly under threat. But I remind Labour members that at the last council meeting, I asked directly Councillor McBride whether he would recommend cancelling the £100 million funding for support for the expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport, and he had a one-word answer, and that was no. So if that's...
The approval of the Vice President was not to expand the airport, it was to create carbon rights.
This is supposed to wait till we call him.
I'll let him off this time.
Yeah, he is in the Labour Party after all.
That's not fair. I'm a neutral person here. I don't represent anybody here. I'm neutral. Okay, thank you.
Can we get that changed, Mr. Mayor, when it comes up and says it going over the Labour group?
That's a mistake.
So...
Come on, settle down now. Carry on, Councillor Cooper. Thank you.
Yeah, a park and ride scheme, whatever it happens to be, but it happens to be near the airport, so it must be doing something to be about helping the expansion of the airport. It's not going to be there for nothing, is it? And we've heard from Councillor Murgatroyd about the huge 77% increase in there that's going in traffic that's going to go there to the airport for some sort of reason. I wonder why that might be. Maybe they're going to get on a plane. I've heard that. So we've got a bit of an issue here in that is that actually going to translate going through forward? One of the disappointments for me is the aspiration for a Passive House standard. Now, again, we come up with Councillor McBride, and often when we actually get to the Cabinet, things that are recommended by the working group or put forward don't actually make it past the Cabinet. It's a blockage. It's usually a bit of a problem there that we have. And so that is a real concern. So merely having an aspiration when we should actually make it a firm recommendation, I think, is something that we need to do. And we've also got councils like Norwich and Exeter who are doing this stuff already. What is it that somehow or other, why is it that we are so far behind other local authorities? I heard reference from Councillor Taylor to air quality and climate change both being together. It is, I mean, both things are important, but somehow mashing these two projects together is particularly difficult. The report does lack a clear greenhouse gas calculated environmental audit, and I think we really need a clear understanding about what net zero carbon is, and I think that's something that needs to be understood by the council, because at the moment we're only looking at certain parts of our emissions. And there is a general tone of self-congratulation that we get from the council about what it is doing. And we've got to understand that
Councillor Cooper, I'll give you another 30 seconds extra where you got interrupted, yeah?
Yeah, okay, that's fine. But we've got to understand that we are not as good as we are. In 2008, we won the Ashton Awards for Sustainable Energy. We won the British Renewable Energy Awards for the work we did on warm zone, on energy efficient, on renewable energy in homes. What is it that we can win now? What is it that we can actually put forward and say we are better than any other authority in the country? I don't think we've got that. And I think we've got
30 seconds now.
But we've got a long way to go if we're going to catch up with others who are way ahead of us.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. That's Councillor McDonald.
Forgive me, I'm not really massively on top of all the procedures, but hopefully this is a point of order, because I have to say Councillor Cooper has made some claims there. I actually got phoned up by a gentleman of the press as well about this, but I deliberately didn't address it in my report because I wanted to keep things positive. But I have to say this is my point of order.
Personal.
Okay, my point of information, whatever it is, the minutes, the report...
Can everybody calm down, please?
The notes of the report, just to be absolutely clear about this, okay, the notes in the report were taken separately by two different officers, and they then, so those contemporaneous notes were compared, and when I got phoned by the journalist, I also checked my own notes, which I'd taken in detail and recollection, and they agreed with the officer's record, and the final report, as you know, has been signed off by every other member of the working party. Now, I'm not going to start throwing accusations around, but what do you think? What do you think is more likely to be true on the basis of those facts?
Yeah, thank you for clearing that. Thank you. Councillor Hall, David Hall.
Seems to me it's a shame that we're not going to strike a note of unanimity on some of this. Several of colleagues have explain why, although we support quite a lot of the things that are explained in this report, there are things in it which we think are either vague or unambitious, or maybe need tying down with proper implementation times, not really reflecting the urgency of the matter in front of us. Just to pick up on a couple of things in these phase 1 priorities, work with partners, develop and initiate Kirklees Climate Commission, Green Charter, Kirklees Youth Summit. A lot of this just strikes me as if we're pushing it further and further down the line. And we're into, dare one say, the long grass. Will there be any grass left by the time we've actually done a lot of this stuff. And it seems to me, you know, engaging with young people are the most engaged there is. I mean, you're pushing an open door with young people, get other folk engaged. I know certainly in my house, it's my 9-year-old that's coming home and telling us what they've been learning at school. And then it's, you know, when they've gone to bed, it's me and my wife sitting chatting about it. And it is changing the way we live in very, very small ways. You know, we don't use disposable bin bags anymore. We don't use sandwich bags. I get my sandwich in a Tupperware box now. And you'll see the rather fetching effects of my ceasing to buy disposable razors. I must pick up actually on one point that was made as to the Conservative representation or lack of it on this working party. And that is because we made the point at the time that this is a cabinet responsibility. And we would have sooner seen the cabinet take its action straight away back in January rather than having to wait 10 months for a lot of talking about it, bringing a report back quite late in the day on which it doesn't sound like there's much unanimity. And the fourth thing that I want to raise is that actually what are we voting on tonight? Because this is a cabinet responsibility, the cabinet have made a decision on this, and we've got a piece of paper in front of us with the resolutions of the cabinet. What we are being asked to do tonight is to receive the decision of the cabinet and to note it. I have no problem receiving the decision of the cabinet. I have no problem noting the decision of the cabinet. But I still think that there are a lot of issues that I and other members of the chamber would hope will be picked up and dealt with with a lot more urgency and with a greater degree of urgency than we're seeing at the moment.
Thank you for that, Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I would like to start by reiterating what Councillor Hall has just said. And I noticed in the report, well, actually not in the Cabinet report, but in what's in the Council summons, that to receive the report of the Working Party doesn't actually say what we're supposed to do with the Cabinet report. But as Councillor Hall said, and I agree with that, we can receive it. It's quite easy to do that and quite uncontentious. It's also quite easy to note it. That is also uncontentious. And it's all a great pity, actually, because in my opinion, the Climate Emergency Working Group is one of the more enjoyable committees that I've been on. We had some extremely good debates and discussions. Now, whether we should have done quite as much stuff is a moot point, because we covered a huge number of subjects. And that in itself, I suppose, is a good thing, because it shows that the working group thought that a lot of subjects were relevant, and indeed they are, from what the council does with its energy, to school meals, to planting more trees and managing woodland, to all sorts of other things, building houses and so on. And incidentally, I think I have an answer to Councillor Thompson's point about bricks and mortar. We should build more wooden houses, as they do in some other European countries. And it would be one way of using some of the resource that we want to get by planting more trees and actually provide a useful thing to build with. Seriously, folks. But in my view, there are a number of holes in what the working group was able to do. I was really very unhappy with what we tried to do about transport, because I'm only too well aware, as I'm sure Councillor Murgatroyd is, that there's not a lot we can do about it. It's a bit above our pay grade. Something needs to be done from far higher up the food chain. I'm talking about the government, not the combined authority, because the combined authority can only do what it's got money for, and it doesn't have enough. For a start, we will never get a 21st century transport system in West Yorkshire unless we spend billions, absolutely billions. I've mentioned this before. We've not got the infrastructure. We've got to build it, and it just won't happen. And as for making sure that we have buses to cover the whole area, well, dream on. The legal framework to do that sort of thing just doesn't exist. And unless we can persuade the government, whatever government it happens to be after December the 12th, and I'm not saying what I think, unless we can persuade the government to put a lot more money into improving bus services, then again, it's not going to happen. We might as well whistle for it. Maybe the answer is more electric cars. But there's one flaw in that argument, and that is that you might have got rid of the emissions, but you've still got the congestion. And public transport has got to be a large part of the answer. Regrettably, we never bottomed that. Personally, I would be prepared to receive this report, even though it quite clearly doesn't go far enough.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lawson.
I agree in large part with the previous two speakers. Again, we give thanks to the people who've actually made these reports and spent all these hours on it. It will provide fruit, I'm sure, in the future. I just wanted to have a word on how this document got here and how it got to the way it is now, because there are a couple of things that bother me about that. So it came from a joint motion at the beginning of the year in January. All parties were invited. The Conservatives declined. Councillor Hall has given the reasons for that decision at the time. The Liberal Democrats sort of jumped the other way and saw a chance to get into the climate change fight in a very direct way. We hoped that there would be action. We signed up, and that was in January. Last week, 11 months later, we were notified that the report would go to Cabinet, and that was held yesterday. This report didn't come before groups. I find that really worrying, because when I talk to, when we hear Councillor Walker talking about involving everybody, why weren't groups addressed with this? We have valuable information, we have valuable viewpoints, we have questions that can make this more robust. That's a very serious omission in my view, especially when we're talking about including everybody. There's also a sense here that, as I was reading the report, I got a sense of bundling here, of issues that, well, certainly of streams of work that have been in play for a while, and of issues that perhaps should not be bundled together and should be kept as separate streams of work. That concerns me because it doesn't feel as though we're concentrating on focusing as hard as we should on the emergency itself, but are getting a little bit diluted in our efforts. So while this report went to Cabinet yesterday, that to me was kind of like a cut-off for the joint working in this report. Because when it went to Cabinet yesterday, and when it was signed off by Cabinet, it became a Labour report. And everybody else was cut out. Now, I think that should give Labour a real pause for thought and really consider and think long and hard about how they want to go forward from this point, because it will take everybody and it will take not just us in this room, but it will take the public. And I think Councillor Taylor touched on a point earlier about including different sectors of society. Well, you need to connect with all of them, because everybody's got a game in there. Everybody's got something at stake in this. I think I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Homewood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a few things. Firstly, I was just going to point out that a few colleagues earlier mentioned the fact that there wasn't any targets or timescales in the report, which I think is slightly unfair. Having read through it myself, there's actually quite a few targets and timescales, so I think we just need to make that clear. Maybe not as many as they wanted, perhaps, but they were definitely in there. The other thing that I just wanted to mention was just about the youth summit idea, and I think the thing that we need to remember is it's not so much about getting young people interested in understanding what climate change is. It's about building solutions that suit young people, that mean that actually resolve the problem. So I think, for example, from my own position of being on the Transport Committee in West Yorkshire, there's a lot of effort there going into increasing bus patronage for younger people. Because if we get the offer right for young people, that will mean that they won't progress to needing cars or other forms of transport. Or they'll be much more comfortable using those offers. So I think that's a really important point, and I think we need to realise that young people are the answer rather than older people. That's not to say there's no consultation with older people, but I think that's something that's very important. The other thing I just wanted to quickly mention, it's slightly about my own ward, I suppose, but it was just around the planning policy and the building and housing and things that's in there. I've just been struck through the meeting that there's been a number of things that have been mentioned. Firstly, we talked about the A62 and the link road in Bradley. And in the presentation, there was a mention about the air quality management zone and the traffic light system that you've been using there. My colleague also mentioned about the housing on the Bradley golf course site. Just sticking out to me how important it is to link all these things together. And I know there's stuff in here about having, neighbourhood plans and management plans, but certainly I think it's really important, certainly from my perspective in Bradley, and I'm sure it's the same in other areas, that we really put a lot of focus on that and have the resource that's needed. I know sometimes in our area when we've wanted perhaps officers to come and talk to residents about, in Bradley for example, we've not always had that. And I think we really need to put some focus onto that, to do that engagement, to get that right, and start building those neighbourhood plans and have increase people's understanding, and to really look at, if we're going to deal with an air quality management area, perhaps we do need a road junction to improve that. And I think we need a bit more engagement with people on that. And I also just wanted to refer to about the passive house stuff, because again, that's something I really want to see in Bradley. If we're going to build on the council land, the important thing we've been told all along is that the reason for doing that is to make sure we get the development we want. Unless there's really, really good reasons, I can't see why we wouldn't do it. So that's something that I'll certainly be wanting to take forward along with the other things that I've mentioned. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I start by apologising to Councillor Walker that I missed the first part of his speech, but I can only presume from the reception I got when I came back in that the Cabinet have accepted my suggestion that they have an active travel champion. Thank you very much for that. Mr Mayor, there's been some comments about participation in the working group. Can I just reflect what I was told yesterday while we were going to Cabinet to hear this, that members of the working group were not allowed to speak on occasion at that group. So we have a group where we had people with far more knowledge than many of us have got in this room, and the working party was exclusive rather than inclusive. So you should look at who was there and who you were allowed to speak. Some of those in the room opposite can confirm this, Mr Mayor. Mention has already been made by Councillor Taylor about the delegation of responsibility. And I would remind members to look back at the webcast of the annual council meeting when I charged the leader to take responsibility for the actions. And he said that's what they did. He said there was going to be no more mention of council officers leading publicity. There was going to be no more hiding behind things. So what we're going to see, Mr Mayor, from now on is the leader and his cabinet up front and centre for everything like this, taking responsibility. And I look forward to that. There's been reference, Mr Mayor, about what this long debate is going to culminate in. and I would refer colleagues to the paper which has been submitted as a result of Cabinet. The final item is that the report and resolutions of the meeting be referred to Council for information. Not for report, not for note, but for information. So we're just being informed of Cabinet decision. We are not being asked to participate in that, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the issue about this, and we heard it from the introduction, is about carbon emissions. Again, there was no clarity yesterday when members of the public who had experience in this questioned about the emissions target. What were we, the council, going to measure? It turned out the response was about CO2, particularly from transport. We're not measuring all the greenhouse gas emissions. We're not measuring the whole carbon. We're just going to go on the 23%. So by that, there's nearly 80% of the emissions of this borough that are not being measured and targeted. That's what we were told yesterday. The other thing, Mr. Mayor, the point 4 of the recommendations talk about communications. One of the key issues of communications for this should be that this should have been in the form of a white paper or consultation. It shouldn't have gone to Cabinet yesterday with 5 days maximum for the public to see it and then come here the day after. It should have been put out to the public so that those deputations we've had earlier on could have made their reasoned remarks. Those remarks could have been considered and maybe included by Cabinet in a report and then brought back to us. What we're being presented with, Mr. Mayor, is a fait accompli. Mr. Mayor, the built environment is rightly highlighted, and it's a change which must be made. But Cabinet have sadly left developers, and I believe, Councillor Cooper, you referred to them as rapacious in a previous speech, with the opportunity to evade this with an unqualified statement about viability. This needs absolute clarity and writing into a supplementary planning document. What cop-outs are you going to allow developers? Mr. Mayor, we've also heard from Dr. Stowe, who made a very valid point about air travel, and I think that's been referenced before. And I hope they have greater success in getting clarity on the air travel that members of this council, the leader and others make. Because when we've asked that before, all we were told about the leader's carbon offset was he set up a working party. Not what he was going to offset his personal carbon footprint from, I think, 2 trips to Cannes so far on behalf of the council. So, as China, somebody says, so we need that clarity, Mr. Mayor. We also need measures. The report says we advise staff not to sit with vehicles idling. This council can actually instruct staff on what to do. When they're sitting watching roadworks all night and stuff, they can turn the engines off, not leave them idling.
30 seconds, Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are many other things, but just before I close, may I, under standing orders, Mr. Mayor, request that the meeting be extended to allow consideration of the all-party motion now sitting at item 12.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Who's anybody seconding? All supporting that motion? You don't count it. Not motion, sorry, supporting that amendment.
So just to clarify, members, it's just been proposed and seconded that you consider extending the council. So you are now voting on whether you support that proposal. Thank you for that clarity. Okay, well, we might, depending on what time, we might get there anyway, before 9 o'clock. But I think so there's 2 things you could do. One would be to move it forward so as soon as this item finishes, yeah? And do it that way, rather than extend that. Yeah, okay, are we okay with that, Councillor Bolt? So basically what we're saying is this item will probably finish before 9 o'clock. We'll move straight to that at that stage, yeah? And then we'll take a vote on it at that point. Thank you, members.
Councillor Kath Pinnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to focus my comments on the Air Quality Action Plan, which actually is about 2/3 of the report that we've got in front of us today. And you know, in some ways, you sort of, you know, commend what the council's trying to do. There's about a 30-point list of actions to improve air quality in Kirklees. They're all very worthy, but they're not very radical. And they can't be very radical because there's a lack of political leadership to make them radical. And that seems to me is what is lacking. So what we have here is a need, which we have agreed to, apparently, by 2038 to have carbon zero. 23% of that is going to be from traffic emissions, which, by the way, also harm health. So how are we going to deal with it? That's the question. And the very worthy, I'm not critical of it at all, list of actions in the plan is not going to get us to that place. So what are we going to do? There's a couple of things, pointers within the plan that lead us to think that there is a lot more we could do. For one thing, what is not considered in the report is the impact on health. And I am quite surprised, actually, that there's no health data included in the report. Because I'm sure we would all like to know what the respiratory illnesses are better or worse than comparative data from other regions of West Yorkshire or elsewhere. That should be there, because then we'd get a feel of not only poor air quality in 10 air quality management areas, we would get a feel of air quality that's affecting all our residents. And that seems to me to be something that we should be very concerned about. And the second thing that I want to raise is this. Somewhere in the report it talks about that the number of diffusion tubes which are used to measure the air quality have been reduced since 2008 because of lack of funding. It actually says lack of funding. So one of the actions that the Cabinet can take quickly is to increase the number of diffusion tubes so that we do begin to understand what the air quality is across a wider part of the district. The second thing I want to comment on is this. We measure, particularly because it's easier to measure, nitrogen dioxide emissions. What we're not measuring sufficiently is small particulate emissions. And small particulate emissions, says the Public Health England, there is no safe level, especially for children, because they get into the bloodstream and elsewhere. So maybe that's another action the Cabinet could take, is to think about how you're going to measure small particulate emissions, which would drive more change. So two instant actions over and beyond what's in this report. In the local plan, which is a missed opportunity when I think about it, and maybe it means we need to have some supplementary guidance points added to it, to the local plan. One, it says, new developments located to ensure the need to travel is reduced to sustainable transport other than the private car. I hope I don't know about anybody else's developments in their patch, but none of them in mine relies on anything other than the private car. And we're even to the point where a development in my ward is requiring a Section 106 agreement to mitigate the harm it will do to air quality.
30 seconds, Councillor Pinnock.
Why we are still persisting with this. So what we need to do, I'm going to give you about 4 things, apart from the ones I've already suggested to Cabinet they do. We should require every new development to have every home with an electric car charging point, not just a few, everyone. All new development should have renewable energy generation, solar PV or something.
Councillor Pinnock, time is up.
Yeah, you just let me finish, I know you will.
Go on, carry on then.
And the last the last point is the difficult one. It's where I disagreed with the Councillor Andrew Pinnock in front of me. We always disagree. This is the one I'm going to tell you about. We need to start pressurising West Yorkshire Combined Authority to take action on public transport. Because if anybody says to me, come here, as somebody did, we must get rid of our cars, come here on public transport to your
Can we
council
wind up
meetings,
now, please?
you
I've
cannot
given you enough time.
do it.
Thank
and
you.
that is appalling. So there's your actions. I should be testing to see whether you do them.
Councillor Donovan.
Gosh, Mr. Mayor, we've covered a lot of ground in this debate tonight. It was a genuine desire when we brought that climate change. We brought the climate change motion through via Richard in January. Completely genuine. And to hear the criticism in the chamber tonight, only a few months on, you'd almost expect there's a general election round the corner, because all I've heard is a lot of political showboating and no pragmatism around the challenges that climate change presents and the desire and the genuine desire that the Climate Change Committee have. I find it totally disingenuous. I think it was Councillor Thompson, apologies Councillor Thompson, to make a link, on the one hand quite right, that the production of bricks and cement is a contributor to CO2 emissions, but then to equate that to a problem with our local plan on building houses, I find is tenuous at best, that we are somehow maybe culpable in the climate change emergency. I find that tenuous and just misleading to people. Just to put into context, the UK's percentage contribution to CO2 emissions is 1%. China is at 29%, USA is at 16%, much larger contributor to fossil fuel and coal production. What the people of Kirklees want is a measured, moderate and appropriate, with the resources that we have, in the context that we have in Kirklees, of how we deliver our climate change emergency in Kirklees. And what we have here is that measured, appropriate and ambitious and appropriate for Kirklees plan for climate change. And it's right to remember that we are not trying to ring, we're not trying to ring China, we're not trying to ring the USA to tackle their production of coal and their heavy industry. But what we're trying to do is do what's appropriate for Kirklees with the resources that we've got and in the context of where we sit. Thank you. And I'll be supporting this motion.
Councillor Pondo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank the work that the cross-party working party did, because genuinely they've done a fantastic piece of work, and also to the two community members, Chris Herring and Gideon Richards, who actually gave the time. But Mr. Mayor, I am genuinely disappointed, and it's not criticism, that the Conservative Party had an opportunity to join the cross-party working group, and I'll come on to that in a minute, that they didn't take the opportunity, and to actually come here on the 11th hour and you had some valid contributions, but I would have liked them contributions to have been aired when the opportunity was there. And I'll come on to that, because I think there's a lot more work we need to do. It's not the end of the debate. And I think the valid point that Councillor Thompson made, I think that was really, really good. Turning point and turning a tank, I think you said. I think was it on the other side. But you did make some valid points in terms of the construction industry, because we don't control that. In terms of the industry, to actually change that will take a massive amount of energy, not just from here, but nationally, and it's completely changing the way we think and how we build our homes. Traditional method of construction, I'd like to get them out the window and get the new wooden homes that Councillor Pinnock was talking about, but it's not that easy. It's about changing the whole society and how it works, and it's so important. And you're right, government needs to take more ownership of this. We will be a partner in that. And the mass transit system that we need in West Yorkshire is so important, because if we don't have that, we're actually just scratching the surface. Mr Mayor, I'm sure all the council members are fully committed behind this, but let me make no mistake, we are fully behind this agenda. My administration is taking this very, very seriously. This is a priority that we have to actually get behind, not just as an administration, but as a council. And some of the feedback I'm getting, I'm listening. We can do things better. And Councillor Lawson, there are some learning points. And I'm sure when we get the right of reply, we'll hopefully hear some more. But the debate has not ended, and the work has not ended. Actually, it's not going to begin, because there's so much work we need to do. The United Nations actually declared this climate emergency many, many moons ago. And it only became a top agenda item because a young girl in Sweden, known as Greta Thunberg, actually took some action. That action then resonated globally. And Mr. Mayor, on the 20th September, I went down to London on the same day as I had to make a declaration on what we were doing. And I actually said at the council meeting before that 20th September that this is not an agenda for activists, this is not an agenda for just myself or the members, this is an agenda for the whole of society. You know, I want every single person in our communities to actually become activists, because people want to do something, and we will provide that leadership. There's three things that actually come out at me. Everybody's had some really good responses, but the three things that come out to me, which I'm sure people understand, is we've heard of the concept fuel poverty. What I don't want to do is create green poverty. And those of you who understand fuel poverty will know exactly what I'm talking about. Most of our residents who actually want to earn an honest living drive cars that will emit a high CO2 emission. But if we suddenly do a policy that actually says, oh, we're going to ban all these, yeah, you know, we're going to actually impact on the most vulnerable, we're going to impact on the working class, and we're going to actually create such a problem for ourselves that by solving one problem, we've created a bigger problem. So this needs very, very careful thought. We just don't need significant investment resources, but we need actually a significant shift in actually national policy. And this little bit of work we've done is actually start of doing that. That's why, Mr. Mayor, I mentioned earlier on that as we go into the budget process, the green agenda will be a top priority. And Councillor Pinnock mentioned the charging point.
Councillor Pando,
charging points. Mr. Mayor, it's very important right here.
I know, but it's 30
the
seconds.
The charging point will be something that will be a key feature. We've also got our own vehicles. The vehicles actually are obsolete, and we need to actually make sure that we actually get efficient green vehicles. So, Mr. Mayor, I hear what you're saying. I hear what the other members have said. We need to do a lot of work, and I want to make sure this council works together. Although in administration doesn't mean anything, but if you can't change hearts and minds, then we've lost.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pando. Right, Councillor Medho, right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some very interesting contributions. I'd like to pick up Councillor O'Donovan's, and he actually acknowledges that the report covers a huge amount of ground. It was a genuine desire, and we need to make sure that we all work together to actually make the recommendations real. It can't possibly stop at the report. It has been mentioned quite a number of times that this is an ongoing process. And it is a report that I want everybody to own. We need to move together because we can't do it alone. It is not the Labour group or the Labour administration, although we may be in charge. We want all the members in this room to feel reassured that we want you to come on this journey. And whilst noting all the contributions, let me reassure you, that members, that every point will be picked up and given serious considerations as we move from phase 1 to phase 2. And Councillor Munro, let me reassure you, if it was just lip service, we would not have spent over an hour discussing this and many, many hours. The 8 meetings plus an outside contributions were of 3-hour duration. So we had a lot of hours and we covered a breadth of, the scope was ginormous and people worked really hard. So we're not, Councillor Hall, we are not kicking this down some alley. We need support. We need to engage people, and engagement is key. And Cabinet will reassure that engagement happens appropriately. I want to pick up Councillor Bolt's point about some people, the accusation that observers were prevented from speaking. Can I put it on record that observers spoke many times throughout the duration of the working party, but the final meeting rightly had to leave the speaking rights only to elected members of the working party. That was simply because of the time constraints, and also at the last meeting it was important that elected members had time and space to discuss the final report. So I think rather than go through, I mean, I could go through, I made notes on every contribution. I'd like to leave it there. I want us all in this chamber to vote for this report, to travel on this ongoing journey, a flexible approach which will change as the needs change.
Be quiet, please.
So I want everybody in this chamber to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can we use the consoles, please, to vote on this recommendation as moved by Councillor Mather? Thank you. Can we just show of hands, please, in support? Yeah, that's carried. Given the time, I'm now going to move to item 12 as agreed. Councillor Bolt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief introduction to this. It's an all-party motion, but it's important that members understand what the motion is actually asking for. This came from a discussion with the director of the AMI PLC. In a company of that size, it's caused them no hardship to offer interviews to veterans. What we're saying clearly, so the members understand, is we're not saying give people a job, we're saying give them an interview. They have to then prove that they have the skills and attributes. I trust, as an all-party motion with full support, that we can then proceed to communicate this positive stance that Kirklees is doing. It's an addition to our covenant, and I think it's a very positive thing for Kirklees in this time to be saying to our veterans, we appreciate you may not have the admin skills to get past the rigorous job applications, but we'll give you an interview and we'll see how you fare. Move the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Pando?
Mr. Mayor, I'm delighted to support this motion. It's times like this at North Council, when we have cross-party motions, I fully support it.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Are you proposing that move to vote, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Show of hands? That's carried, thank you. The remaining items require full debate, as I'm proposing to defer until the next meeting, and I close the meeting now. Thank you.